And without further ado, it is my great privilege to introduce to you Megan and Dave M. from Bismarck.
My name is Dave Mann. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Dave. We love you, Dave. Lots and lots and lots of love.
Oh, okay, me now. Hi, guys. My name is Megan Mann, and I am also an alcoholic.
Hi, Megan. We love you, Megan. Lots and lots and lots of love.
We love you too. Just a couple things before we get started here. First of all, can you hear us okay? Yeah? Maybe I'll sit closer to the microphone. How's that? Okay. So, a couple questions for you guys, right? Number one, how many of you have yet to be through the steps? Oh, we've got a lot of veterans, okay? How many people are under, let's say, 90 days sober? Couple, okay. There we go. Awesome, we want to welcome you. Couple other questions. How many of you are currently in a relationship, dating or marriage or, what's that thing called, engaged? Okay. How many are here looking for relationship guidance in a broader application, like friends, family, children, all of it, okay? How many are just here looking for a relationship?
It's okay, be honest. It's
Yeah,
fine.
you know? All right. Well, we're going to get into this here in just a second. Dave and I have done this once before. I'm hoping that this one is a little bit more interactive because I don't remember much from the last time we did this. I wasn't feeling real good, but I think I may have nodded off. I'm not quite sure. So hopefully we've improved a little bit.
That's actually why we're recording it, just so that we can listen to it and figure out what the heck we said actually is.
It is not. But for those of you who are a little newer, and to be entirely honest with all of you, for myself, right? I don't ever want to be a part of a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous where I walk away not knowing what alcoholism is or what Alcoholics Anonymous is. So just super duper briefly, we're just gonna take a couple minutes and do what we call qualify, right? I have a sobriety date. That date is April 16th, 2014. That is not a day I chose, right? I didn't wake up one day and go, whoo-hoo, I'm gonna get sober today, people. It is a day that was given to me because God doesn't make misery comfortable, right? And I'm super, super, super grateful for that. You know, I started drinking when I was about 14 years old, and we're going to go through this like super fast, okay? And here's what I found. When I took that first drink, I found the solution to a problem I did not know I had, right? I knew it was doing something for me, right? Up until, you know, that first drink. I mean, I probably could have used one when I was about 7. I was a tightly wound, neurotic kid. I've suffered my entire life, and still do, if I'm being honest with you, from what I call the killer bees. I could be, I should be, I want to be, right? And I'm always thinking at all these things that I want to be, but I'm not. And I just can't quite get there, right? You put alcohol in me, and I get there. Not only do I get there, I exceed it, and I become everything I've ever thought I should be, right? I grow a little bit, I lose 20 pounds, my IQ goes up by 50 points, and I am just the most interesting person at that party. I've actually seen video of myself drunk, and that ain't what I look like. I wanted to be able to tell you, right, that I'm a classy drunk, that maybe I have a couple martinis, a few glasses of wine. I'm not classy, I'm messy, and that's all there is to it, right? So anyway, I take this drink at the age of 14 years old, and all of a sudden I realize that I have relief from something, but I don't know what to describe that something as, right? But all of a sudden I feel exactly the way I think I should be feeling, and I didn't know that that was missing, right? I didn't know that it was abnormal until it was gone. So, you know, at 14 years old, I couldn't get my hands on alcohol all the time. This thing progresses, right? And I find myself in college. I find people that I party with starting to tell me, we don't want to go out with you anymore because somebody's got to babysit you, and we're sick of that, right? So what do? We get new friends, right? So I just find my people somewhere else, right? Eventually, I find myself down in Florida. And if you were to look at me, if you were to look at my life on paper, right, I look really good on paper. In fact, I've always looked rather good on paper. It's the follow-through I lack, right? But I'm studying something that I'm very passionate about under some of the best minds in the world of what I'm studying. I'm engaged to a really good guy. It wasn't this one, but there are other good guys in case you're looking. He's probably not a good guy anymore. I scarred him, but amends have been made, never mind. And I live in Florida, right? I'm not like having to scrape my car windows. I can run the beach, right? Get to go do all these fun Florida things. I don't know what those fun Florida things are because I spent all my time with my butt on the bar stool, but I'm pretty sure there's fun Florida things to do. So anyway, what ends up happening is I get kicked out of this university, right? I'm not going to go into detail about that, but it's a good story if you ever want to hear it. If you ever want to feel better about the things you've done drinking, come and talk to me about this story. And I'm 29 years old, and I feel as though my purpose in life has now been lost. But what was lost is my identity, right? This thing that I had worked for a very long time, I no longer have, right? And this has been my identity since I was like 14, probably 15. So anyway, I do what any self-respecting 29-year-old would do, and I hightail it back to North Dakota with my tail between my legs, and I move in with mom and dad, right? I have found out that when you live with someone and you're not paying rent, that's actually called homelessness. I wouldn't have admitted that when I got here, but I agree with it now, right? So I'm living with my parents, and I was absolutely certain, right, that by having to come home, which I did not want to do, like that was the ultimate walk of shame, right, from Florida back into mom and dad's basement. I was absolutely sure that things were going to change, right? I'm not going to drink the way I drink around my parents. I'm not going to do those party favors in my parents' basement. Right? I'm going to get my life together. And I meant it, right? Like, I'm not stupid. Like, I knew what was happening. Like, before I even got kicked out of school, I knew I was going to get kicked out of school. And I would wake up every day, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to do those things. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to, smoke things in the bathroom. I'm not going to do the very things that I know, that I can see are tearing me apart, right? And I'm not one of those people who walked in here saying the only person I hurt was me. I knew exactly who I was hurting, right? And there was a period of time, right, where I really cared, and it hurt me. But here's the thing, I need relief. I need to feel different. I know that I'm hurting you, and you know what? I love you, I really do, but I need that. I want you in my life, but this I need, right? So every single time I'm taking a drink, and I know that I'm hurting the people around me, and the thing is that sometimes I hear people say, well, if you knew better, you'd do better. I knew better the entire time. I just couldn't do better. I did not have the power to do anything other than be what I was. And I'm not saying that like as an excuse, right? But I have no connection with anything greater than me except maybe my intellect, right? And at 29 years old, I move in with my parents. I think this is going to change everything. And then someone gave me a call about a week and a half in, and they asked me that fatal question, hey, you want to go have a beer? I didn't even think about it. Yes. Why didn't you call 10 days ago, right? And again, it's off to the races, right? And over those next 3.5 years that I lived homelessly, unemployed, in my parents' basement, a couple things happened. Number one, I infected my family with the family disease of alcoholism, right? They were well affected before this, right? But they've got a front row and center seat to watching me absolutely burn myself to the ground. I can't even say burn my life to the ground because I just didn't have one, right? The other thing is that I quit trying to stop. I guess, if I'm going to be honest about it, because I had no reason to. I had zero reason to. When I was in Florida, it's like, okay, well, we'll stop for a day or two because I've got things that need to get done, places I need to show up, right? I was a person who I could always stop. I just couldn't stay stopped. Now, somewhere in that 3.5 years, I lost the ability to stop and became a daily 24/7 drunk all the time drinker, right? That is how quickly this disease progressed, and all of a sudden I find myself waking up in the morning, and I've got to have a drink, right? I've got to have a drink because my hands are shaking, and they're actually shaking right now because I'm really quite nervous. My hands are shaking, right? And I've got to bring it down a little bit, right? Most importantly, I need to have a drink so I can walk out of my bedroom and attempt to look the people I claim to love in the eye. I am so filled with shame, disgustedness, dark and twisties, that I have to have something in my system to be able to show my face in my own parents' home. I mean, like, that's a level of shame that, well, you guys get it. Right? Pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization. I don't know about you guys. I never strung those words together before in my life, but when I read that phrase, I knew exactly what it meant. Right? And on April 15th, 2014, nothing happened. And that's the last day I had my drink. And here's why nothing happened, because I believe that the bottom doesn't have to necessarily have anything to do with what happens out here. The bottom is an internal thing. I burned all this to the ground, right? It was gone, right? Smoking, it's still smoking over there somewhere. But as I said, what happened is that for whatever reason, that day I could not take the misery any longer. My mom had come home. My mom, I believe, was 74 years old at the time, taking care of my 79-year-old father who has dementia, and she's taking care of her daughter, right? I am contributing nothing to this household. I take. In fact, I do believe my mother was doing my laundry. I am that person. And mom comes in, and she's carrying in all these groceries, and for whatever reason, that day she looked incredibly old and incredibly frail. Well, that reason was me. And I remember looking at her, and it's like one of those moment of clarities, right, that we talk about in here where God paralyzes that liar inside of you just long enough to get a glimpse of the truth. And I said, I need help. Well, it's not really what I said, but we're not going to get into detail about that either. This was in Dickinson, and they didn't have a whole lot of resources, but here's an amazing thing, right? My family tree drips of alcoholism. My mom knew that she had seconds and inches. She knew that she had a little bit of a window before all of a sudden my heart and my mind slammed shut, like they always did, right? She dealt with these things enough. So she poured my drunk butt into the car, Got Dad already. Dad doesn't know what's going on, where we're going. He's like, we getting ice cream? I'm like, oh my God, right? And she takes me to the hospital. And I'm ornery. I'm like a Chihuahua who thinks she's a pit bull. I like to start stuff, and this big, quite handsome actually, doctor walked in, and you know, I'm trying to push his buttons, and he's like, I am not dealing with little drunkie over here. So they called down the LAC. In the meantime, they took my blood alcohol level, and the only reason I mention this is because this was by far not even close to me blacked out, and I was a blackout drinker, but my blood alcohol level that day was a 0.43. And they called in the LAC. And during this time, like, I know what's happening, and I'm starting to like think, I overreacted here. Right? I have overreacted. Like, all of a sudden I go from, you know, casually drinking on the couch watching Gunsmoke with Dad to like an emergency room, and I'm wearing a paper gown. I don't think I want to be here anymore. You know, the things our heads tell us. And all of a sudden I'm preparing the battle. Right? And I've been in this battle before. Quite frankly, I'm very good at this battle, right? And I'm coming up with all these ways, and I'm going to get this woman who's going to come and talk to me about my drinking. I shouldn't be drinking. Well, duh, honey. I know I shouldn't be drinking, right? But if you bring it up, I'm going to tear you down. And I have a sharp tongue. Whether I know you or not, you're going down. And that's not what happened. This woman walked in. She was dressed nice. She smelled good. That was odd in my world. She was accessorized. Her hair was done. She had makeup on. And she walked up to me with a very bizarre look in her eyes, which today I've come to know as compassion. And she put her hand on my shoulder. And it's not a 12-step call in the way we think of a 12-step call in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it was exactly what I needed to hear at this time. She said, honey, I've been where you're at. We're going to get you some help. And there was something about this woman who looked good and smelled good and could match her socks and her shoes to her outfit that, and she was a professional. She had a degree. I'm arrogant. I liked those people. I mean, I still like those people. Whatever. That meant something to me at that time in my life. Today it doesn't so much. But that meant something to me. And I remember the very first thing in my head was like, really? You have been in the hospital with your butt hanging out of a gown, with your parents crying in the corner because you can't stop drinking? And this is where you're at today? Like, it just blew my mind. It was the first time in my life that I ever got a glimpse into the fact that maybe I wasn't alone. Because the things that are going on in my head and the feelings that I are feeling, they are dark, man. And they are isolating. And the actions that I am taking, especially towards the people I would tell you that I love the most in this world, made me believe I'm a sociopath. It would have made you believe it too, right? And she said, you know, we're going to get you some help. I was like, well, okay, cool, right? And a very weird thing happened. They sent me home with like a printout about DTs. Like, no meds, I mean, they're just like, get her out of here, and here's a handout in case your daughter starts seizing and seeing things in the middle of the night, which had happened in the past, so I kind of knew how to handle that. Anyway, so that's where everything changed for me. I went home, and I poured out the half a drink I had left that I was drinking when my mom came home. I poured out the rest of my liquor. I got rid of my party favors. And I woke up on April 16th, 2014 with the attitude that I will do whatever I need to do to be well, because you know what? Someone else did. And up until that point, I didn't think anyone had ever been the way I was, right? Terminally unique. And that they could make something of their lives. And at a point, it went away. But what ended up happening is 2-3 days later, it was actually a couple days later, it was Friday, April 18th, it was Good Friday. My butt got shipped up to a local treatment center, and I did whatever that treatment center told me to do. When I got done with treatment, I went into a sober living home. I didn't do everything they told me to do, but I did most of what they told me to do, right? But when I was in treatment, I got introduced to you people, and here's what I learned, right? And I needed to learn this because if you would have asked me, you know, hey, Megan, are you an alcoholic? I would have been like, oh, yeah, like that song. I would have told you. You guys are too young to know this song, probably. Anyway, doesn't matter. I would have said, yes, I'm an alcoholic, but here's the thing. I didn't know what that meant. I thought it meant drunkenness. I get drunk and I make a fool out of myself. I thought it meant multiple DUIs. I only had one, right? I thought it meant losing multiple jobs. Again, only lost one, right? I thought alcoholism had a bunch of stuff to do with the things that happened out here. It doesn't have a dang thing to do with what happens out here. It is what happens within me. Right? When I take a drink, I trigger what we call the phenomena of craving. Phenomena meaning it's goofy, we can't explain it, right? And what happens to me is I want more. I wake up the beast, right? And the beast is thirsty. If 1 is good, 2 is better. If 2 is better, 3 is great. If 3 is great, 4 is amazing, and so on down the line. I may tell you, I'm going to go out for 2. I stay out for 2 days, right? That wasn't my intention. But once I consume alcohol, I am no longer running the show, right? I may have every single desire to make it home to my loving husband. But here's the thing. If I take a drink, as much as I do love this man, I won't make it home. Ever, quite frankly, because then, you know, you'd kick me out, and that'd just be awkward.
I get the dog.
You know I have restraining orders against me, right? They've expired, but anyway. So the thing is that I physically process alcohol differently. I don't know the science over it. I don't have to know the science over it. All I know is that if 1 is good, 2 is better. I'm drinking for effect. I don't drink for the taste. I don't drink to fit in. I drink because it makes me feel different, and I don't like the way I feel without it, right? If that were the only problem, if I put the bottle down, I was a stopper, as I mentioned. I was not drunk consecutively from age 14 to 31 when I got sober, right? I'd probably be dead if I was, I don't know. I can stop. The problem is I just can't stay stopped. Why? Because I have a mind that lies to me in my own head, in my own voice, and it'll tell me things like this. It's going to be different this time, Megan. Megan, just don't do shots. Shots are bad. You know what, Megan? If you drink alone, you won't get in trouble. Hey, Megan, just don't drink and drive. Everything will be fine. Don't drink Everclear. Maybe have wine. Oh my gosh, I can go and go and go, right? But the number one biggest lie my mind told me, and in all honesty can still tell me, is I just need a little bit of relief. I just need to take the edge off, right? Now, why would it say that? Because there's a third component to this disease. And our doctor, in the doctor's opinion, Dr. Silkworth, right, he calls it being restless, irritable, and discontent. And I remember reading those words when I was in that treatment center, and I about died. Because I had been trying to describe to psychologists, psychiatrists, people who loved me, myself even, what had been going on within me for as long as I could remember. And they summed it up in 3 words, like, boy, did I feel stupid, right? But I'm restless. I cannot stay rooted anywhere, right? My favorite place to be is on my way to someplace else. I am constantly living in anticipation of what? I don't know, but it's coming, right? We have a dog. Our dog is with Dave, then he wants to be with me, then he's outside, then he wants to be inside, outside, and, you know, we play the game, right? And I'm like, it's okay, buddy. I'm restless too. I get it, Hazard. I get it, right? We got little broken souls. So I'm restless. I am irritable. Now, this looks a couple different ways on me. Number one, I will externalize it. And as I said, if you get between me and the bottle, you're going down. I've made amends for this, but I assaulted that 74-year-old mom because she took the keys away and I couldn't go get what I needed. I will hurt you. And if I tell you I love you, you're in big trouble. You're going down every single time. And unfortunately, sometimes that's still true. If I tell you I love you, you're going to get the worst of me. I know. If I'm not externalizing it, I'm internalizing it. And what it looks like is morbid self-reflection. Megan can't get out of bed. Isolation, separation, withdrawal from life in general, right? It's literally like the best way I can describe it is like me drinking alone in the dark, in my bed, kind of curled up in a ball, like a sad country song, right? You know, like the dog left, my wife left, oh, poor me. Like that's the best way I can describe it, right? I turn it inward. I am irritable. And I am discontent, meaning I'll be happy when, right? Fill in the blank. I think we've all been there. I'll be happy when I get him. I'll be happy when I get rid of him. And then I'll be happy when I get him again. And then I'll be happy when I marry him. And I'm, right? All these things. I'll be happy when I get the degree. I'll be happy when I get the next degree. I'll be happy when whatever, right? And sometimes it helps for a day, a week, a month. And then the shiny new wears off, and I'm left with me over and over and over again, and it's back to the drawing board, and back to the only thing that has ever actually solved this problem, which is alcohol and other chemicals, right? I have a sponsor. I have been taken through all 12 steps. I have been taken through all 12 traditions. I have been taken through all 12 concepts, and I work with other women. I have a home group, which, by the way, is the best group in town. Bismarck Shoulder to Shoulder Group. We meet 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday nights. We are a speaker meeting. Come hit us up. We'll put you to work. But here's the thing. This is what, in the simplest way I can describe it, working the 12 steps with a sponsor has done for me. I no longer live a life I need relief from. Boom. I'm okay in my own skin, right? Even when life is stormy, all right, whatever. I don't always handle it real gracefully, right? But my mind doesn't automatically go, a drink will take this away. Sometimes it says, a sheet of brownies will take this away, right? Sometimes it says, eating another puppy will take this away, right? But it no longer goes to a drink will take this away. But here's the thing. If I stray too far away from you guys and I forget an alcoholic, it sure will. If I stop working these steps, it sure will. I've seen it happen over and over again. If I let the blessings that my life have been so abundantly given, if I let that beautiful life come before my recovery, I will drink again, right? So, Dave, take it away.
Hi. Thank you so much for, yes. So, for me, kind of give you a little bit of backstory on myself too. I was adopted at 6 weeks old. My mom and dad had my sister, then they couldn't have kids anymore, so they had me. Doesn't make me alcoholic. Did, however, kind of make me personally question where I fit in. Now, my mom and dad absolutely loved me just as much as they loved my sister. There was no differences there. I was a part of that family. There's no question whatsoever. So growing up, my dad was a very functional alcoholic. He managed grain elevators. I drank heavily every night, got up every morning, went to work, and repeat. So that was my role model of this whole drinking thing, is that whatever you do, you get up, you get it done. Just go. Literally, my dad told me one time when I was, this was farther into my drinking, He literally said, Davey, he's like, whatever you do that night before, you get up, just go to work, 5 o'clock, it's done. Like, my dad literally drank one day at a time sometimes, you know, which kind of, in hindsight, kind of blew my mind, right? Like, one day, get it done, 5 o'clock, we're good then, we're good. You know, very active alcoholic father. My mom and dad got divorced when I was about 3rd grade, and my mom went to Al-Anon, continued to go to Al-Anon, so I got pulled to Al-Teen meetings. So I had an idea of what this Alcoholics Anonymous thing was, but for my version of it was you went around and sat with a bunch of kids while all the smoky room was over there with all the moms, and so I had a theory of what this whole thing was. My older sister, spent her Sweet 16 in Heartview, actually, when it was on the other side of the river, and so from that point on, my mom became a helicopter in my life. Like, she was about this far above me the entire time. And I was old school. I didn't start drinking until I was 19. I know, right? That's ancient in a lot of people's worlds there. But what I did do is, while I was growing up, I still hung on with friends that drank. And I was the babysitter, right? I was the one driving the drunk ones around. I was the one putting friends in the tub so they can puke on themselves instead of all over everything else. Like, literally.
That would have been perfect for me at that
I
age.
know, right? It was meant to be. And then, you know, and because of my mom and because of watching my dad and through the false promises and things like that, I was the classic, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to do that. And what it took was, we went to Grand Forks for a hockey game, and the alternator went out in my car. So friends we were all underage, but friends knew friends, and we ended up with a couple bottles of alcohol. And I just decided, you know what? We have to stay here overnight. We got a hotel room. What the heck? You know, I would love to say that it was something fancy or something manly that I drank, but it was Malibu and orange soda. Made me feel pretty. I know, right. And the one thing that I did realize on that night was that literally, you hear it all the time, but like, my shoulders came down a little bit, you know, and I felt more comfortable in my own skin. I did realize, though, that the more alcohol you drank, the harder it was to aim when you went to the bathroom. Like, you really had to close one eye and focus. That was one of those things that I did come out with. But that was a one-time event. It's not like I was raging every single weekend after that, but it didn't take long, because I went from this first time of drinking, I would honestly say within about 3 months, I caught up to my friends, and within about 6 months, I blew past them like a freight train. You know, I was like, this is what it's all about here. And, you know, then I'm trying groceries, extracurricular activities, and it was on, you know, because it was just like we hear about in these meetings all the time. It was that one thing that just made me not feel like an outsider, not feel like I'm awkward, not feel, you know, back to the whole I could talk to the girls. And so from that moment, it didn't take very long at all. I turned 21, and because I could frequent this bar, because that was the bar that my dad always went to. So all the bartenders always knew me, because I always had to come in there to talk to Dad. You know, there was 3 places that he was going to be at home: work, or the bar. I had the bar's phone number memorized. So by the time, 3 weeks into turning 21, I could walk into that bar, and by the time I got to the spot where I was sitting, I would have the beer already in front of me. And this was 3 weeks into being 21 years old. I was like, okay, we're on. This is it. So that was the life we chose, and we cranked it up. And that lasted quite some time. I ended up moving from Jamestown to Fargo. I was installing stereos. I got a part-time cooking job at Hooters. It wasn't a job. It was an adventure. That's all I got. No. And within 4.5 months, everything fell into place. Now all of a sudden, I'm walking around with a set of keys at this place, and I'm assistant manager at Hooters, right? And then life just exploded. you know, the whole kitchen staff and the wait staff, when we're out, we're going to Bucks and we're partying and we're doing this 5, 6, 7 nights a week just because that's what you do. You know, you get off of work at 2 in the morning, there's gotta be a freaking after party somewhere that lasts until about the time the sun comes up, and you go to bed and you wake up at 2, drag your butt into work by 4 and repeat, right? So this is just kind of the life I'm leading for. I did that for about 4.5 years, but along the way, a couple large events that happened very close together was September 3rd of 2000. One of my best friends in the world that literally lived across the street from my dad, he vanished. Like, he's gone. And there's something about, there's a huge difference between watching the news and seeing a missing person, but when you know them, when you know that picture up in the little corner, totally, it's a game changer. And we spent days searching for him, and they ended up finding his car in the Jamestown Reservoir. And the best assumption of what could happen was that he was at a party, and he used to take this loop out to smoke some green stuff, and then he'd loop back, and he lived with his parents across the street from my dad, and he'd always take that loop to catch a buzz before he came home. And if you go down the road about another quarter mile, the turn looks the same, the road looks the same, but that road goes directly into the Jamestown Reservoir. And that's where they found his car. So we think he just missed the first turn. And like I said, that was September of 2000. My dad, it was like losing a son. That's how they had lived across the street for years. And his dad comes up to me and he puts his arm around me and he goes, I already talked to your dad, you're half mine now. All right, I'm in, right? Well, 6 months later, February of the following year, my dad died at 57 years old from alcoholism, right? So now it's like me and Sean's dad, it's like, okay, what do we got? This is it, right? Like, and having those two losses at 26 years old, I was at work at Hooters and my sister called and the only thing I heard on the phone was Dad's dead. And I just dropped to the floor in the office. And at that moment, when I got up from that floor, all feeling, everything just shut off, right? And it was game on. From that moment, I spent about 3 years, pretty much 3 years in a blackout. Like, there's maybe 4 or 5 memories I can really truly remember along the way during those 3 years, but the entire time, I vaguely remember a couple times my friends sitting me down and kind of mentioning that I should probably slow down a little bit. My response were usually, can we talk about this at happy hour? Or my response was to immediately start bringing up I didn't call them character defects, but I'm going to start just gut shotting you in any way I can. I will verbally destroy you. Let's not talk about my drinking because you will realize that it's a bad outcome if we start talking about my drinking right away. And like I said, there was, during that time, people laugh at this one, but during that time I lost a pickup. And when I say I lost a pickup, I don't mean like overnight. Like, I don't know where it's at today still, and it's been 20 years, right? It just gone. It wasn't a real expensive one, but it's just gone. So I don't have the title for it, so I have a strange feeling that I may have sold it or lost it in a poker game. That would be a legitimate option, but anyway, but that's how I drink, right? And during that course of that time, my dad died from alcoholism. Like, literally the death certificate said short-term GI bleed, long-term alcoholism. So there's no question how my father died. And again, from that moment on, he died at 57 and I was 26 at the time. It was game on. Like, my dad had a lot of great characteristics and traits, but I attached myself to every one of his bad ones. And that's how I kept going. And literally, I don't have relapse in my story because I had zero intention of quitting. I was just going to keep doing what I was doing until I was done doing it. If I made it to 57, anything after that was extra credit. In hindsight, there's no way that I would have made it to 57 years old because I had a heart attack when I was 36 years old from drinking and using. And so fast forward, moved to Bismarck, started working at Walmart, got an opportunity to start traveling, supervising remodels. Like, I can show up to work. Like, I can do well. I've got, I don't know, 20 plus years of supervisory positions under my belt. It's like, that isn't the problem, because I was taught you get your ass up and you get to work and you get it done, right? The problem being is that I'm always scraping right on the bottom of good enough. You know, I'm always about 10 minutes late to being called into the office one more time. But I don't get fired from these jobs because when I'm there, I do a wonderful job, and I'm very personable, and I know how to bullshit my way through these things, right? It's easy as that. People feel bad for me, right? Because now I'm to this point where I'm playing the whole "my dad died" type of thing. I'm using it as a weapon in my life, or I'm using it as a get out of jail free card. So I moved to Bismarck, and I'm doing this Walmart thing, and so I have this, my mom at the time, I had to move back to Bismarck because she became stage 4 esophagus cancer. And so I'm living with my mom at 36 years old, taking care of her because she's literally dying of esophagus cancer, and I can't draw a sober breath to beat nothing, right? And now all of a sudden she's got these piles and piles of drugs. You know, we're talking pharmacy galore. Well, then it turns into 2 for you, 1 for me, 2 for you, 1 for me. And that's the weekend that I had a heart attack. My heart attack started on a Monday. That weekend, she was in Mayo. She was doing radiation and chemo, and I needed relief. And I went digging through her piles of stuff, and I had been tapping into that quite often. And I found a bottle of liquid morphine. And I was literally taking capfuls of liquid morphine and chasing it with scope because liquid morphine was disgusting. It tasted horrible, right? So this is what, right. So scope sounds like a great way to great. Never use scope as a chaser. It's just, that's my public service announcement for the day. But that's where I was at. You know, at one point, I'm standing, I'll never forget this one, I'm standing on her shower chair in the bathroom, smoking pinchies and blowing them up into the fan. And I look over and I see myself on the long mirror on the back of the window, or on the back of the door in my boxers, like this. And I think to myself, this is not where you thought you were gonna be at 36 years old. Like, what in the hell is going on with you? But there's my life, right there. So, that Monday, get through the heart attack story real quick. That Monday, I didn't feel good. My cousin took me to the emergency room because I didn't have a driver's license. Why would I? I was the 3 DUI guy, actually. The 4th was an actual physical control, but I got a hat trick plus some. And so she took me to the hospital. I walked in. Mind you, I'd been drinking morphine for the past freaking 2 days. And she puts a stethoscope on my chest, and she said, "It sounds like you just have fluid on your lungs. There's nothing I can do." And I said, "Doc, it really hurts." She goes, "Okay, here's a prescription for hydrocodone. Go home. If nothing's better in 2 days, come back." So here I go back home, and I'm taking this hydrocodone every 3.5 hours, almost to the minute. Because after that, all of a sudden, it feels like I've got this 15-pound weight on my chest, and I can barely breathe. I can't walk from here to Ashley Way without getting hard of breath. So I laid there, and that was on a Monday. Tuesday, my mom came home, and she ended up in swing bed at Missouri Slope. I couldn't even leave the house to go visit her. Wednesday, I ran out of hydros, and I called my uncle, and I said, "Sil, something's wrong." So I walked into the walk-in clinic up by Olive Garden here, and they've got the little screen that says, I push short of breath and chest pain. Well, that got the gal's attention across the table from me, and she's like, "Are you having a heart attack?" I was like, "No, they just have fluid on my lungs." "Okay, have a seat in the lobby." Sat down in the lobby. At this point, it feels like I've got a 50-pound weight just sitting on my chest. I can barely breathe. Get into the office, and a nurse comes in, and the doctor comes in, and the doctor kind of does one of these things, like, Like, we're gonna try something. So he walks out, nurse comes in with this weird machine, and she puts a bunch of wires and sticks them on me. And this I'll never forget. She started the machine, and it ran for about 6 seconds, and it kicked out a piece of paper about this long, and she goes, "I'll be right back." And out the door she went. I thought to myself, well, that kind of seemed a little, boom, that same door busted open. There was like 6 people in the room. All I heard was acute heart attack and calling the ambulance. So I did what any normal person would do. I grabbed my phone and started trying to text my girlfriend. Don't freak out, but I'm having a heart attack, right? Don't do that either, right? By the time I'm trying to get this text sent, the paramedics show up, and when it got real was the moment that I'm still trying to send this text, and the female paramedic goes, "Well, I guess we could just wait to try to save his life until he's done sending the text." Send. We're good. Like, get a hold of my uncle. He was the one that dropped me off. He ended up hanging up on the paramedic because he thought it was me. He calls him back, blah, blah, blah. By the time we get down to the hospital, my uncle's already there, right? And I don't remember this, but he says he'll never forget this till the day he dies, is that they pulled me out on the stretcher out of the back of the ambulance, and as they're wheeling me past him, I turned to him and I said, "Can you fucking believe this?" And off I go, right? I walked into the clinic up north at 4 o'clock. By 4:30, I'm in the basement of Sanford, and I've got my right coronary artery was 100% blocked. I've got 2 stents. From the best that they could say is my heart just kind of went on that side. And years later, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling him this story. And at the point when I started talking about liquid morphine, the dude went white across the table. And I'm like, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "You have no idea. This is exactly how my mom died, is from overdosing on somebody else's liquid morphine." That really scared me. So I literally laid there for 2 days having a heart attack. Why I'm sitting up here right now, I don't know if this is the reason or what the reason is, but there's got to be one, because there's no reason why I should be here. I wish I could tell you that I saw the light and that would be my sobriety date. No, having a heart attack at 36 years old kept me sober for about a week and a half. Because then all of a sudden the idea came to my mind, because I don't have a solution, right? I'm still crawling. That spring inside of me is still getting tighter and tighter, whether I'm medically horrible or not. It's still on me. It's still there. And I had heard that, well, red wine is good for your heart. I hated wine, right? But a box of red wine is not good for your heart. I'm just, once again, PSA, I've got a lot of them. I used to walk around all the time saying, I'm willing to be the bad example as long as somebody else is willing to learn from it. And that's literally how I lived my life. So I was off on the races again and continued doing what I was doing. And the odd part about it is that towards the end of my drinking, because of the fact that I got all the DUIs and because of the fact that, I could teach outpatient treatment classes at this point because I've heard it so much. But this last time I had to go to an outpatient treatment, another one, to get my driver's license back. And I don't know if it was divine intervention or I don't know if it was perfect timing. I have no clue. But having that heart attack that young, because I had heard only 30% of people in their 30s that have a heart attack actually survive because they don't think it's a heart attack. And they end up dying in their sleep or something like that. So whatever stare down with mortality that it was, that actually cracked the door to a little bit of willingness. Because again, I was just going to do what I was doing until I was done doing it, just like the old man. Get it done. So I walked into that outpatient treatment a little bit willing to actually shut up, to not go through the exact same script that I had written in my head before. Oh, I drink this much, and it's only I could have just handed them a folder, like, here's me. This is from the last time too. But I got willing, and again, kind of like Megan, my sobriety date is actually April 18th, 2011. Yeah. It's a good day. It is a good day. And nothing happened. Like, I literally sat at Buffalo Wild Wings over here and had about 5 tall beers. That's it. Like, there wasn't some dramatic event that took place. But that next day was when I started going to those outpatient treatment classes, and I just finally was miserable enough to be like, just listen. Just listen. Because after my dad died, in my bedroom, I would literally write on sheets of paper, what would Chuck think? Don't drink today. And I had these pieces of paper stuck all over my room to remind myself to not drink. Didn't help, right? Because it wasn't an option. Not drinking just wasn't an option, because obviously that told me that I wanted to, but I knew I wasn't going to. I was just going to run it to the end of the rails. So I got a little bit of willingness, and I started, through a couple different events of old drinking buddies. I had an opportunity to get a ride to some meetings because I didn't have a driver's license. Why would I? And I started getting some of this stuff. This friend of mine that I used to drink with, he quit drinking and I moved back, and he would pop over at my mom's place every 2, 3, 4 weeks or whatever and just call me up. Hey, you want to go grab a cup of coffee or something? Never once push Alcoholics Anonymous or these meetings or anything that he was doing on me. He would just show up like he was my Ebby, because he looked different. There was something about his eyes, he just looked healthy. And I'll never forget, we were at his apartment, and I finally said, so what's up with these meetings and what's up with this not drinking thing, right? And he didn't say a word. He just grabbed that blue book, turned it to the Jaywalker, sat it in front of me, and he goes, just start reading here and just read like about a page and a half or about a half a page. And I started reading about the Jaywalker, and I'm like, as I'm reading, I'm like, this dude's an idiot. Wow, and if you haven't read the Jaywalker yet, you do it after this, like 36, 37, somewhere in there. And I'm like, this guy's an idiot. He is a dumbass. Like, he is a fool. And I kept on saying, like, what a jackass. And it got to the very last point, and I'm like, I'm that jackass. Wow, like that. And he could not have presented that any better to me at that moment, of just me reading that spot right there for me to make that decision and hit that brick to hit me in the forehead, because I knew I didn't drink like everybody else. I knew I was an alcoholic because Dad was an alcoholic, and like Megan, I didn't know what it meant, but I knew there was something broken in there. So I started this process, and I wish I could say I grabbed onto a sponsor right away and everything was great, but no. I showed up 5 minutes late to meetings and left 5 minutes early to meetings for 2 years before I got a sponsor. And the interesting thing is that it was brought to my attention, and it's so true, is that my first sponsor was probably the first healthy relationship I've ever had in my life. Like, with a human being was my first sponsor, because before that, it was all manipulation. It was all just destruction, me. And finally, my mom, she ended up passing away from cancer when I was 11 months sober. And guardian angel moment here that I'll tell you about is that I was at a NA meeting on 24th and I think it is here. And I was telling the group about how I was so afraid that I was going to do the same thing when my mom died, because it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And this gentleman, I believe his name was Mike. I don't know what his name is because I've never spoken to the man again after this one moment. But he pulled me aside after the meeting and he goes, I heard what you were saying, and I don't mean to be rude, but it sounds like you're setting yourself up for a relapse. You've got everything put in place so that when you do go back out to drinking, it'll be justified, or at least you'll think it is. And those rude words hit me in the forehead again like a brick. And I went, holy shit, he's right. He's absolutely right. And that was another one of those God moments where I don't know who this guy is and I've never seen him again in my life, but he changed the course and direction of this. I did finally get one of those sponsor things. And those sponsor creatures. And one term that I always find interesting is I actually have a sponsor. Now, there's another term called a sponsorino, right? And a sponsorino, I-N-O, sponsor in name only. So, do you have a sponsor or do you have a sponsorino, right? You can walk around and say, yeah, so-and-so's my sponsor. When's the last time you talked to him? Oh, about 4.5 months ago, but... So, two totally separate terms, and I actually have a sponsor today. I've worked these steps, and I work with guys. I got a home group, same home group that she just brilliantly, and you know, I don't know. It's the ability for the chaos and the destruction that I've had in my life, for all you crazy people to want to hear about it today. I don't know how we got here, but we're here. So that's all I got on that one. Thank you so much.
Prayer. God, please help us set aside everything we think we know about you, everything we think we know about ourselves and others, and everything we think we know about life and our recovery. Also, that we can have a new experience in you, a new experience within ourselves and with others, and a much needed new experience in life and our recovery. Amen. Okay, so for those of you who are like veterans and super versed in alcoholism, sorry about that. I just wanted to make sure that that the message of Alcoholics Anonymous was carried this morning, because most of this now is going to relate directly to traditions. Now, of course, these spiritual principles, the traditions themselves, yeah, duh, they come from Alcoholics Anonymous. But, hey, Nikki, would your daughter, she's kind of been my assistant today, would you pass these out for me, sweetie? The traditions that we have on this little handout here have been reworded. They're the same things, the same concepts, the same principles, but a little bit more easy, at least for us to understand in the terms of traditions and relationships specifically. So this is going to be brief, but we want you guys to know that not only are we qualified as alcoholics to be here, we are qualified because our relationship has been a mess. Well, some people are saying it, they can't hear. Can you hear now? Okay. In the back, can you guys hear? Okay. So, for those of you who have been around for a year or so, you don't know the backstory. There's a backstory. And here it is. So, Dave was, I met Dave when I was like 6 days sober. He was a part of a group of individuals who carried the message into the treatment center that I was residing in, right? And that's how I met Dave. Dave instantly caught my eye, and in my mind, right, he was mine. I don't know about you ladies, but like, I don't date, I take hostages. And before the man really even spoke to me or knew I existed, like, he's mine, stay away, right? So that was our first encounter. We both went to that meeting for a while. We went to a group conscience that actually didn't exist. Like, there was supposed to be a group conscience meeting, but nobody knew how to hold a group conscience or what it was. It was like him, me, and one other guy. So we kind of just flirted. And I fell in love with the business side of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I joke about this a lot, but, when I came to all of you, I had been through treatment, therefore I was treated. I knew I couldn't go home, so I was going to do this sober living thing. But I really did look for a husband in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I would sit and I would be checking out the guys. Do they have a ring? Do they not have a ring? I'm not listening to anything that's being said, but I'm getting lost in piercing blue eyes, and like fantasizing about our cute little alcoholic babies and, all these things, right? I literally would walk like a little bit more than the distance here to Serenity Place in 3-inch stilettos and a dress. Because I was, Rosie can vouch, Lexi can vouch, I was going to find me a husband in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I want to be very clear, I'm not endorsing this, okay? And now what you hear, what happens next, hopefully this will convince you why. It's crazy. So apparently somewhere along the line, I caught Dave's eye, and he actually asked, it was my grand sponsor at the time, if he could take me out on a date. I was told to wait to get through the steps before before focusing on a relationship. Trust me, I was well focused, but until actually physically going on a date, we did wait until we got through the steps. So in my mind, we did everything right. We did everything right. And Dave and I have this relationship, and we date probably for about a year, and then we break up. And then we get back together, and we date for a while, and then we break up. And then we get back together. Well, there's probably a few more together breakups. I don't know.
37 break. I know.
I lost count somewhere along the line. And here's the reason for that, right? Is just because I had been through the steps does not mean that I was well. And to be honest with you, when I was presented with this idea of, hey, yeah, start dating when you're through the steps, I was like, I'm gonna get through these steps fast, right? You get to some of these yes or no questions, like step 2, do you now believe, are you willing to believe in a power greater than yourself? Yes or no? Of course I do. I don't know. I didn't want to fail, right?
Of course we did. We were texting each other. That was the higher power, really.
Yep, and that's true too. We were having, talks. I think they were relatively innocent. I don't know. Mm-hmm. My home group, right, which I guess it was his home group first, but they give out a phone list, right? I got his number, so thank you, AA. Anyway, so we're together, we're apart. We're together, we're apart. And the thing is that at 4 months sober, right? And first of all, I want to be very clear that I am just sharing my experience. Dave will actually share his own. And, a lot of us do this, right? And if you've had this experience, I want you to be very clear, we are not condemning. I get it, right? But it's also my experience, and it was messy. So we're apart, we're together, we're apart, we're together because he had never had a healthy relationship until his sponsor. I had never had one either, right? I'm a hostage taker, right? I don't casually date. We'll go on a date, I'll sleep with you, and then you're mine. That's just what it looks like, right? And when I say you're mine, I believe the shortest relationship I've had, I was going to say up until Dave, but that doesn't make any sense, was 3 years. And we're talking high school through 31, right? When I say I take hostages, I take hostages. The longest one prior to this guy was 10 years, and we were engaged to be married. And the way I ended that relationship, because I'm good at breakups too, is 10 years. We'd been together for 10 years. He moved his entire life down to Florida for me. And I introduced him to my new boyfriend. That is how I broke up with him. Yeah, that's how I handle things. That is Megan in relationships left to Megan and Megan's own devices. So I know. That's how I feel about it too. I have made amends. Thank you, God. He allowed me to make amends. His parents also allowed me to make amends. But anyway, so I don't know anything about spiritual principles, right? I mean, I don't, right? I don't know what they are. I can't tell you what steps relate to what. I mean, I can like barely tie my shoes. And we're in this relationship on and off, on and off, on and off. And then we get back together again, right? I know Liz and Daniel, Rule 62 was kind of where you met. You shared cheesecake. Thank you, right? But one of our more significant get-back-togethers occurred over Rule 62, and you actually introduced one of the speakers as me.
I did. It's my sponsor now, actually.
Oh, it was Mike?
Yeah.
So anyway, because, we're making the googly eyes and all these things. We were together from, when Rule 62 is like January. And then we went on a road trip to Akron. We went to go see Dr. Bob's house. And those 3 months were really good months. I mean, they really were. Like, we were on different footing. So we go to Dr. Bob's house. And there is a room they call the surrender room, where Dr. Bob would have his guys do the third step prayer on their knees, like elbows on the bed. So I'm doing that, right? And people are like taking video because this is so significant spiritually, right? And it is a really cool place. And I get up to get off my knees, and Dave is on his with a ring, asking me to marry him.
I take hostages too.
Yeah. There is video of this event, and it literally looks like he's handing me a tarantula. Like, I jump backwards, and I am, like, visibly shaking. And I'm, like, looking at my sponsor because my sponsor's there, and I'm looking at all these people going, "Aww." So what do? You say yes.
Sheer
right?
terror is on her face.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm like
I would love to play the video on the big screens, but I think the only person who has access to it is Ryan.
probably.
Anyway, so I say yes, right? It's not the first time I've said yes when I mean no. So it's like, and quite frankly, I don't even know if I knew that I meant no. I didn't know what, I didn't know, right? So we're together, and now we're engaged. And I think one of the first things I said after I said yes was like, we're on the 20-year plan. Which is another bad indicator, like meaning we're gonna wait 20 years to have the wedding, right? Like, again, there are red flags here, and he's painting them green. And so we're together, right? And what happens is that I'm spiritually sick to begin with, right? And during this whole on-again, off-again time, Dave is my refuge, so to say. Now, I would go, oh, that's so great. No, he is, I am using him to feel safe. I am using him to get me away from the sober living home I'm in. I am using him to put value in my life. Never once did I think about serving him. It was his job to serve me, duh, right? And I'm living a lie, right? Well, we're engaged, and we were engaged for about a year. And, it got to the point where this lie was just too heavy to keep carrying around. And I worked with my sponsor and my grand sponsor, like, super closely, because I don't want to do harm. I mean, I know I'm doing harm. I don't want to do more harm. And I was told, right, that if you're going to end the engagement, you need to end the relationship. Because you know who he is. It's not like you're dating him, getting to know him. You know who he is, and you know where he stands, and you're not there. And that terrified me. I wanted the comfort of like, hey, maybe stay with me until something better comes along, because I'm that girl. Sorry, but I mean, it's the truth, right? Like, I want the security of the relationship, but I don't want the commitment, okay? So, it was right before my sobriety birthday, like April 14th, 2017, I believe, is when I broke off the relationship and the engagement. And it was terrifying because he was my higher power, and I knew what that meant, right? And in addition to that, I hadn't had enough time, single, sober, to know who the heck I was, right? I mean, that takes time anyway to get to know who you are sober, right? And then let alone my identity is all wrapped up in him. And so I felt like a piece of me was missing. And again, like out in Hollywood world, people are like, oh, no, that's not cool, that's not good. Right? Dave does not complete me. I'm sorry, whatever that movie was. But Dave compliments me, right? I don't need Dave. I want him and I choose him. And I've made a commitment to choose him every day for the rest of my life. But the thing is, we hear all these things like, oh, that's so cute. No, it's not healthy. But anyway, so we break up. And, I was told to, like, not message him, like, no contact. And we would have some contact, then we'd break it off. We would have some contact, then we'd break it off. Trust me, it wasn't perfect. I needed to poke the bear and make sure that if I needed, he was still there, that security was still there. And that's the way it looked, and we had some time apart, and then
So here's the thing with this time apart that we spent is that in hindsight, it was absolutely one of the best possible things that could have ever happened. Because once again, on my side of it is that she was my higher power, and my whole theory was, okay, if I get a ring on her finger, we'll figure everything else out later. Just like let's just get this so that she can't break up with me another time, and we'll figure it out along the way. Horrible way to think about it, right, in hindsight. But over that course of that year, like I know she spent a lot of time growing towards God, and I was forced to. I actually switched sponsors at this point because my sponsor at the time was an amazing sponsor, but at the time he was self-proclaimed. He's like, I'm really not good at the spiritual thing. I'm not good at meditation. He's like, and that's exactly where I needed to be. So at the time I switched sponsors and started growing and started realizing that she's absolutely right. It's like, I don't need her in my life, because at the point where I need somebody in my life, the only person I need in my life is my higher power, right? That's a need. Everything else is collaborative, right? We work together on things. And one of my first sponsor, my second sponsor, he said something really profound. He's like, tonight, if I go home and my house is burnt down and my wife and my children are gone, you'll see me here tomorrow at this meeting, right? And that was a big deal to me, because it's like, no matter what the externals are, he knows where he needs to be internally to be okay, and it's to continue this process and do this program. And so I took a lot of suggestions from him. I took a lot of suggestions from other people, but I did spend that time growing towards God. And I literally had to get to a point where I was okay with not having her in my life. Like, it's a hard swallow to say, if her life is going to be better and she's actually going to be happy without me in it, then I have to be happy for that. And it sucks at the time thinking about it that way. It really does. But until I got to that point of not needing her in my life, then actually that was right around the time we started growing back together again.
Exactly. And it wasn't even just a fact, I mean, I can't speak for you. It was a fact of not needing him or anyone else, like romantically, right? Just this idea of like, I'm okay with or without a guy in my life. Now, I had had periods of being single, but you know, when you're 29 to 31 and you don't leave the house much and you get kicked out of every bar you're in, I don't know if that counts, but I definitely was single in that point of my life. But I dug in spiritually as well. I had an opportunity to write another sex inventory based just on this relationship. And the thing is that my first sex inventory, I don't know if you should say that around kids, relationship inventory, honestly, the vast majority of people I hurt were women. Because I am not a good human. I see women as my competition, right? If I walk into a bar and I think you're prettier than me, I'm intimidated. But I ain't gonna back down. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna flirt with your man. And I'm gonna show you that if I want him, I can have him. And I'm gonna throw that in your face. If it doesn't work, then I get to be right about what a terrible, crappy person I am, right? So either way, I win, right? But I am hurting females left and right. So this first relationship ideal had more to do with how I'm going to show up for the women in my life, right? And I was placed in a position where I had a lot of women in my life, and it was bumpy too. But I started to grow there. So then when we broke up, I got to sit down, I got to look at me, right? I got to look at my bad behavior, who I hurt via that behavior, where that bad behavior was coming from, right? And what I should have done instead. And because of that, I got to add to this ideal, right? And anyway, so then we get back together. And I knew when we got back together that I wanted to marry him. So I don't know how long we were together, but he graduated college, and for his, graduation gift, I decided we were going to take a trip to New York. Go ahead.
Mind you, after the first engagement, I did tell her I wasn't going to ask her twice.
Right.
So this, if we're going to get back together, if we're going to get married, she had to ask me.
Yep.
I was like, I'm not going to ask you twice. We already checked that one off the list.
Yep. And like we had made amends to each other, but how do you make amends for that, right? For breaking off an engagement? Well, this is how. We went to Stepping Stones, and it was so funny because a woman who is important in my life, some of you have heard Mari G from Canada, she was just randomly there that day. And I ran up to her and I hugged her and I told her what was gonna happen. She's like, oh, it's so great. And anyway, so she actually got to be a part of this, which, it's just, it was just cool. So anyway, we went and Dave sat down at the kitchen table that Ebby carried the message to Bill to. And I got down on one knee and I asked him to marry me. And I don't know what that date was, to be honest with you, but we haven't even been married a year. Our anniversary is coming up a week from Sunday, right? It'll be 1 year. Right? So, that, I don't know, do you have anything to add to?
Just other than, that's like the classic AA geek story, is that I asked her at one founder's house and she asked me at the other founder's house, and here we are. No, and the other thing that it has, okay, like Daniel and Liz, you guys can absolutely vouch for it, is that there's alcoholics, and there's AA, and then there's Al-Anon, for people that love alcoholic, like an alcoholic that loves an alcoholic, we need our own meeting because it's just totally, completely out. Yeah, Lexi, you like it's whole new territory here of trying to navigate this thing of between, finding we literally had to sit down and find a common ground and talk about the fact that the other person can say, I think you should call your sponsor, and it's not a weapon. Like we had to have that conversation, right? But it is, it's been a ride. So just because we're sitting up here, don't mean it's been green grasses.
And that's exactly right. Like, please, please, please don't put this idea in your head that we are like some AA perfect story. Hopefully you heard that and you can see that that is not the perfect relationship story, and neither is our relationship today. This stuff takes work, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't like work, right? I don't like compromise. I want it my way. Why? Because I'm right. And he wants his way. Why? Because he's right. And I mean, we butt heads. But the thing as well is that we are probably about as different, with the exception of our alcoholism, as two people can actually get in this world. Dave is very creative and like soft-hearted and has this. He would give you the shirt off his back. Right? I'm not that way. And I'm much more like analytical, structured, this way, boom, boom, boom. I'm a planner, and he's a dreamer, right? And here's the thing, if we are spiritually fit, we complement each other perfectly, right? Like I can keep him a little organized, a little on track, and he gets me to play. And have fun and stop and smell the roses, right? But when we're not spiritually fit, our home is a very scary place to be. It really is. Our poor dog. So we're gonna get.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
We're gonna get into the traditions, and Dave's gonna lead us off. I just want to say one thing, and that is that we are using the experience we have as a couple. But again, these principles can be practiced anywhere, right? When I say partner, you think family, you think boss, you think friend, you think roommate at the treatment center or the sober living home, and you'll be just fine, right? But this is our experience, and if I can look at the relationships in my life as though they are divine curriculum, right? God has placed people in my life so I can learn, and maybe they can learn. Right? And sometimes the people we butt heads with are our biggest teachers. So.
All right, tradition 1, our common welfare comes first. A healthy relationship depends upon unity. Without a personal relationship with a higher power, it's difficult to have unity in other relationships. Now, what's unity, right? I have a definition of combined into one. So when we're getting together in a relationship, when we're married, we are combining into one. That can be difficult for some people because, we've lived all of our lives, for the most part, doing what I want to do and doing my thing, and now all of a sudden I have this other human to think about what she thinks about and think about her feelings and think about what she wants, and that can be a hard. It can be a hard place to tread sometimes because we're trying to create this harmony, I guess. And harmony, I have a definition of consistent, orderly, or pleasing arrangement of parts. So this harmony of we are trying to work as one so that it's new territory. It's new ground to and working together, on a regular basis. It's as simple as thinking about her and thinking about, like, literally creating my life to have part of her. It's just not two people that get to sleep in the same bed, right? Like, and Megan's amazing at this, is that I get a phone call or a text that says, hey, I'm stopping by the store. Do you need anything? Something as little as that is that I know that she was actually thinking about me enough to reach out to me like, hey, is there something that I can make your life easier? Or do you need a candy bar? Or kind of the running thing is, okay, 2 monsters, we're golden. Yeah, I'll be happy. But each individual is, or family member, you know, because some families have more than 2 people in it, and a dog. We are responsible for ourselves to make sure that, okay, my sponsor is an amazing example of how to treat the person that you love, right? And one of his biggest things is that he says, I just want to make sure that my wife knows that God loves her by the way I treat her, right? And that's like my example that I'm shooting for and trying to, is my job as a husband is to make sure that Megan knows that God loves her. And I need to do whatever I can. The truth of the matter is that sometimes I need to put some of my desires, wants, needs on the back burner for this combined effort. Like, I didn't just say, hey, yes, we get to do taxes together and we get, you know, it's not about that. It's literally about now my life needs to evolve, not revolve around her. My life needs to evolve into having her as part of it. I know, I just made it up just now. It's amazing. Write that shit down. Write that down. And it's hard to navigate sometimes because, like I said, you know, before we were together or even when we were just dating, it was like, okay, yep, we'll block out this 3 hours that we're going to go out, have dinner and watch a movie or whatever. And it's like, okay, back to me. You know, I'm going to go do this or, you know, take the motorcycle out or whatever this case may be. And there are those times where I would much rather just jump on the motorcycle than spend an entire summer trying to get grass growing in our backyard. You know, but that is part of this commitment that I made, is that I want and she wants a home, right? So then we have to together combine and get out in the backyard and dig constantly. 4,000 rocks. Anyway, so, but when it comes to this unity, when it comes to this healthy relationship, and the key is a healthy relationship, because we can have a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. But is it healthy? Is it thinking about her? And I'm not saying that every single moment of every day that she has to be 100%, okay, let me wipe the table in front of you, you know, let me run over here and get the towel for you. And, but I have to consistently be part of this union and this marriage that we put, and it takes maintenance. Mm-hmm. You know, marriage is like a car, right? Like, if I don't maintain my car, at some point it'll be on the side of the road broken. Mm-hmm. If her and I do not spend time maintaining and working on this and communicating and doing work to try to communicate, and yeah, it can get tedious. But the opposite is, you know, 2 people, roommates with rings on their finger, yep. Right? And that's not what I want. That's not what I want in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
A little on.
Just, you know, we are still individuals, right? Unity means that to me, my definition is that the whole is more than just the sum of its parts, right? Like, Dave and Megan together are better than just Dave and Megan apart. And what I mean by that is I truly believe that I serve God better with him in my life than when I don't. And I used to think, like, I serve God better when he's not in my life because I have more time for meetings, more time for sponsoring women. but what this man does to my heart, how this man challenges me to grow, what he teaches me, right, makes me better so that I have more to offer you, right? And, you know, we do things. Sometimes we do crazy things, right? To learn to communicate better, to learn to grow together spiritually, because we're so different, and I stink at communicating. So, like, we've done counseling, we've taken workshops, we've gone on retreats, all these things to try to learn how to connect better to each other. But first and foremost, right, I need to be rooted in my God, because every single relationship I have is just a reflection of that, right? So I need to be spiritually rooted, connected, growing, seeking. And it's not that we are a partnership, right? I believe that, again, we is better than me alone. But we have to nurture that. Practice selflessness, right? I don't like that. I want to be a taker. I don't want to be the giver, right? Like, you know, dote on me, give me gifts, tell me how awesome I am, right? But that's not, I mean, he does, right? But I need to do that for him as well. And sometimes that looks different. So the thing is that looking at this idea of common welfare, right? What's our common welfare? And each individual couple, family, unit, right? You can define this. But for me, it's this idea of having this oneness of mind, right? To be on the same level or plane when we're making decisions, right, that affect each other. To be able to be happy and healthy. And again, creating harmony within our relationship. And sometimes that does mean some sacrifice. So it's like, for example, I love to travel. I get the opportunity to travel for some of my work. I also get the opportunity to deny it. And the reason for that is that we don't have a lot of time together. I mean, we see each other for about an hour before bed, and then weekends, basically, right? He goes to work really early. I don't like really early. And then usually, like, by the time I'm getting home, he's winding down, going to bed. So we really are on totally different schedules, in addition to the fact that, you know, we both have stuff to do. And one thing is that, you know, we got married what you would consider to be later in life, right? Like, I had my own little world. He had his own little world. And now we're combining worlds? Like, everything from how we spend our time and dedicate intentional time to each other to the combining of stuff was a mess, right?
I got a lot of stuff.
He
I
does.
got a lot of stuff.
And I have nicer stuff. So, so it's just this idea, right, of, what did you do?
Nothing.
Right, of like what stays and goes. How do we find a compromise? We almost didn't get married over trying to find a house that we both could approve of, right? And that'll probably come into play a little bit later. But the thing is that I have agreed, well, I haven't, we are married, okay? So that means something a little bit different to me than when we were dating, right? You know, I could say, oh, you know, I can travel all the time because someday we're gonna retire and then we'll have a lot of time together. Oh, no, we won't, because we'll hate each other by then. There have been times in our marriage where we have lived this married singles lifestyle, where we're roommates, right? We're sleeping in the same bed, but it's like, hey, hi, see you later, okay, bye, you know? And there's a noon meeting here, and we had a speaker one time. And he said that He would never give his wife a casual, hey, how you doing, in the morning. So why does he do it to God? Right? Just, hey, God, we're good. Okay, out the door. My experience is the opposite. Right? I'll hit my knees, I'll say my prayers, and then it's like, oh, hey, babe, see you later. Right? And so when I heard that, it helped me to realize, right, that my potential for love, our potential as a couple, was not being fulfilled. Why? Because I wasn't dedicating anything to it, right? And we both love Alcoholics Anonymous. We love it. But we do say no, right? And I'm not trying to confuse anyone, right? That's not my intention. But the thing is that I used to say yes without consulting him, right? Because I want to be a big deal. I want you to fly me out there. Yeah, that'll be great, right? Yeah, I'll take that position. Oh, I'm sorry, babe. I have all these committees. I guess I'm home. Never, right? And that is not fair to him. There is a balance, and it looks different for everyone. And there is no way in heck either of us would ever guilt each other over that. And maybe that's what the problem is that very rarely does he ever say anything. And I'd be like all over the place, and all of a sudden it would be October, and I realized that I'd been home for 2 days in the month of September. 2 days. Where I'm packing or unpacking, basically, maybe doing some laundry. So the thing is that our unity, right, our soundness of mind as a couple, he has to be a priority. He's not a contingency prize. He is the prize. Now, I have to maintain my recovery, obviously, duh, right? Like, please don't twist this around and be like, well, Megan Mann said. It's not what I'm saying. But sometimes that means letting go of this idea, right? That I'm going to go be someone. Because I get to be his someone. And that's what's important to me, right?
I'm a visual person. Would probably just here end up on this one, but like to wrap up this unity thing. Best way I can describe it as like being a visual person is that before we got married, I was blue, she was yellow. Together, totally different. It's green, right? It's a completely different thing. We are something that we weren't before, and we're not going to go back to me being blue. I have to adjust to be part of this because now it's not what it was before. And if I walk into a marriage thinking that I can still do everything whenever I want and it's fine because they say yes, well, no, because realistically I committed. You know, it's like we walk into here, and not saying we can't be our own person and can't do our own thing, but like, yes, I've committed my entire life to you except for weekends and Thursdays and well, poker's on this night, and like, it's not, I can't give her my when it's convenient time. Like, we talk about weekends with each other, and literally that is time other than fifth steps. Yep. Like, that's our time that we put together. Now, if there's other things that come up, yeah, we get it. But I have to have specific time, or we have to put specific time together to do that.
And that doesn't mean we're not involved. I mean, I think you guys know we're involved. Dave sponsors a ton of men. I have women that I get to work with, right? We have home groups. We have commitments. We both sit on district and on committees and all these things. Like, you can do it. But our time, for me and for him, is blocked off like an AA commitment, right? And in addition to that, one thing that changed upon being married or living together, I guess, is that when you're dating, every time you're together, it's special, right? Because it's like, ooh, it's a date, right? he's coming over, yay, clean up the apartment, we're going out to eat, right? It's an event. See him every morning, right? It's like always there.
She's still breathing
Right?
over there.
So, so we set aside intentional time, right? Meaning that the phone is over here, right? Meaning that we're talking to each other or doing something together, because it's really easy for both of us to be like, hey, how's it going, hon? You know? But we have intentional time that we dedicate just to each other.
Speaking of intentional time, I think it's about intentional time to eat. We're good, thanks.
Inspire me.
Yeah. Inspire me. All right. Amazing job on all the chilies, and true story is I actually went through and took a little bit of each chili and put it all in the bowl and mixed it up. So I'm gonna submit that, and I need all of your recipes because mine was amazing. All right. So no, great job to everybody. I didn't get a chance to try all of them because we'd all be miserable in the room if I did. So we will get going on tradition 2. For our family or relationship purpose, there is but one authority, a loving God as he expresses himself in our informed group conscience. Each member is God's trusted servant, no one governs. And I think that big part right there is no one governs. What that means to me is that I am not in control of this relationship. I am not continually telling her what Megan can and cannot do, and she's not doing the same to me. We have to be mutual in many aspects of those in our lives. And don't get me wrong, like I am not spiritually plugged in all the time, you know. Sometimes my sickness is bigger than her recovery, and sometimes vice versa, you know, and we have those struggles. And unfortunately, there are those relationships where that you've got that one over-dominant partner. And, well, if you're that person, stop. Now, and I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but here's the truth of the matter is that if one person has to control the situation at all times, like, you're not going to have a healthy relationship. It's just the truth, is that you have to be on an even plane. And like I said, it doesn't have to be all the time. You know, I don't have to ask Megan, you know, what kind of toilet paper we need to get. Well, because I already know that, but that's beside the point. But we have to, it can be exhausting on both sides, because I have gotten into some of those points in our relationship where I'm more of a shutdown person. Like, if she's being over dominant, as it says in on our sheets, I'm oftentimes just gonna shut down. I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut, because I know, in my mind, I know what's gonna happen, and all of a sudden we're gonna start, she says this, I say this, she says this, and I just don't even want to deal with that. So whatever, fine.
It leads to resentment.
Absolutely. In getting to a point, and mind you, this is a working relationship. This isn't a perfect example, but getting to that point does take work where I need to be able to stand up for myself just as much as she needs to be able to stand up for herself in those spots where one of us is being this over-dominant person, and the other person needs to allow that, Absolutely.
And I think, one thing that I was always really confused on is acceptance, right? Like, just accept the situation, right? We look within us, we deal with that, and yes, absolutely we do. But we also do not accept the unacceptable, right? So, violence. I would not accept that, right? I'm not going to go to page 417 and just read it over and over and over again. And there's also some other things in our relationship, right? That's a very, very, very broad example or obvious example, right? But Dave and I kind of have a agreement, right, about how we deal with members of the opposite sex. If he is going to, go to lunch with a friend that is female, he's going to tell me about it first, right? We communicate these things, right? And I do the same thing. Now, let's say I'm getting together with a guy for business purposes, and Dave says, no, that's unacceptable, and to me, it is acceptable. Then we're at a crossroads, right? And we need to sit down and figure this out. And when we disagree on something, well, we'll talk about that later, but when you're dating, right, if there is something that is not acceptable in your relationship, and it has to do with like core values, principles. Let's say I really want to move to Florida. Like that has been my dream my entire life. And let's say Dave gets hives from the sunshine, right? So that's not going to happen. Then me as the person wanting to go to Florida, I have a choice to make. Give up Florida or give up Dave, because his hives aren't going to go away. And my problem is I delude myself, right? When it's things like, let's say it's an internal thing, like I really want to practice the same spirituality, and he does something different. I tend to think I can convert him, right? I can fix him. I can change him. And I can't. So if that is unacceptable to me, then I need to be honest with myself about that. Because that is something that prior to this relationship, I paint these things green, right? I'll go for a fixer-upper, right? I can get him over to my side, right? He will someday love X because I love it. And then what I'll do is I'll go, if you really loved me, which is totally blackmail, emotional manipulation, right? So for example, when he first asked me to marry him, I should have said no. I love you, this is great, but I'm not ready. And I tried to paint that red flag green. And in doing that, I caused a lot of harm, right? So,
Really quick, and if you're in a relationship and it needs to end, right? How do you approach that? That's a big deal too.
you introduce him to your new boyfriend.
Right. My current boyfriend will be mad. No, so and no, but it's a real deal. I was working with a guy with a cat, and he his MO was ghost, just poof, disappeared off the planet. That's how he treated every single one of his ex-girlfriends, and now he gets this relationship in recovery, and because he wants the warm and fuzzies and he wants all this benefit of this relationship, and about 3 months into it, he's like, crap, this was not what I need. Not that she wasn't a nice gal, it was just internally, he's like, I am way too screwed up to be in this relationship, what do I do? Instantly he just wants to block, problem solved, there we go. I was like, no, you need to sit across the table from her and tell her. And he literally said that was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever done in my life. But the growth that you have through that, because it should be uncomfortable, because I told him he shouldn't have gotten that relationship to begin with. Like, I straight up said, I was like, dude, you've got like 3 months of sobriety this round. Like, what do you have to bring to the table? Nothing besides a whole bunch of freaking baggage as a camp.
Right.
Chaos.
And to kind of bring it back to tradition too, right? A couple of things. Do you have an informed group conscience? Okay, let's say I'm single and I want this dude. Do I talk to my sponsor about it? Do I consult God? Is God involved in this area of my life? Informed. Do I know, okay, well, he's in recovery. Does he have a sponsor? Has he been through the steps? Does he work with other guys? What's his home group? What's his program look like? Do I know these things? Or am I just totally distracted by this pretty face, right? But the thing is that if I'm not talking to my sponsor about this kind of thing prior to, I'm being dishonest. I don't have an informed group conscience, right? So the thing is that in our relationship, do we pray before we have hard conversations? Not always. Do I come in armed with some information, right? Informed group conscience, not Megan's way. Informed group conscience. Let's move on to 3.
Tradition 3. 2 or more persons, when gathered together for a mutual benefit, may call themselves a relationship. The only basic requirement for a good partnership or marriage is a mutual desire to be in it and a willingness to make it work. So, do you actually want to be in the relationship? And if so, like, is it out of convenience? Is it out of because I'm afraid nobody else wants me? Is it out of all these other things? I'm really, like Megan said, I'm really, really good at painting my will directly over the top of God's will, so it looks almost identical. But the truth of the matter is that it's not God's will, and it will crumble. And accepting this other person as who they are. I know for myself in a relationship, my willingness to work on the relationship ebbs and tides, man. It really, really does. Because sometimes I'm like, I really want to, work on this, and we're really, really good at kind of doing that about 3-week dive into something new, and then it slowly starts to taper off, and we're not reading what we always do every single night like we had been, and then one or the other will kick it back into gear. Okay, yep, we're back up on track again, and it takes effort to be together. Another tough reality of it is that I told world, I told Megan, I told God that this is my person, right? For the rest of my days. This is my person. And I don't have to do everything with her at all times. But kind of like I had mentioned before, is that if I've normally got, motorcycles, and I've got hunting, and I've got golf, and I've got sponsees, and I've got this, and I've got that, I can't plug her into the spots that fit, right? I told God that I want her in my life. She has to be one of those big parts of my life.
The other thing, to ask yourself, if you're in a relationship, why? Why? Sometimes I am guilty, right, of it's cheaper, right, if we're living together and we split the rent. It's cheaper, right? It could be we have a child, and I don't want to be a single parent, right? It could be he makes me feel good about myself, right? And your partner should. But if that's the only motivator you have for being in that relationship, don't you think maybe that's a little selfish, right? But when I look at it again, it's like, do we serve God better apart or together? Does he encourage my growth? And do I encourage his, right? Can I accept some of the things that irk me? Because let's be honest, there are in every relationship, One thing that we didn't really touch on in Tradition 1 under unity is division of labor, right? Where it's like, okay, who is going to do what? What am I contributing to this relationship? And because we've lived as adults on our own for a long time, we live very differently, right? When it comes to how we like the house, when it comes to cleanliness, when it comes to eating. I mean, we're totally opposites, right? So what of these things is negotiable, right? What can we tweak? What can we play with? But what is not negotiable is a willingness to work on this relationship. For us, anyway. I mean, you can do what you want. But the thing is that if there's not a mutual desire, meaning both parties, to be in a relationship, why on earth are you there?
Now, what Megan just touched on was both parties have to, or we need to be able to want to improve the relationship, right? Now, that's a tricky word because your version of improving the relationship and your partner's version of improving the relationship may not be the same. Like one person may think that taking the garbage out once every month is improving the relationship. So here comes the tough part when we actually have to communicate between each other and have that conversation of, well, you know, I think improving the relationship would be, you know, doing a date night every 2 weeks or whatever, you know. But we have to actually talk about those goals, because if we don't talk about it, one person may be thinking that they're doing just fine and the other person's like, well, why is that sucker so lazy all the time? Good example is that we did go through some counseling classes, and nowhere in my brain would I have ever put two thoughts together that said, me putting the dishes in the dishwasher tells Megan I love her. Never. My brain would not have put those two things together. But I'm glad I did, because I find out now that that's what's called an act of service, so that she doesn't have to focus on that as one more of those tasks that has to be done before she can like relax. Like, but without talking about it, without understanding it, never.
And I got to learn as well that it's hurtful to him when I walk through the door, spend 20 minutes with the dog, and then give him a kiss on the cheek and, you know, go upstairs to meditate or something. You know, his style of love and showing love is different from mine. But we needed to learn that about each other, right? We needed to learn what works and what doesn't work. And again, a mutual desire for a working relationship, a healthy relationship. What does a healthy relationship mean to each other, right? Some people grow up never seeing this modeled. So they might think like sex. I don't know, right? And if you do, I'm not criticizing that. A healthy relationship is what you say it is, but talk with your sponsor. And other people might think, I grew up in a home where we had family dinners every night at 6 p.m. Every single night. Sat down at a kitchen table and we had dinner. Now making that, well, first of all, let's say it would more be like Dave, making that demand upon me, doesn't work for our lifestyle, right? But we do need to communicate these things. But if I have demands upon him before I can be happy, right? Like, you need to get rid of your sunshine hive so I can live in Florida, right? You need to be better at putting the toaster away before I can love you and before I can be happy. We're in trouble, right?
And the truth of the matter is that oftentimes in those situations, if I'm not spiritually plugged in, I could write her a script to say exactly what I want her to say, and she still wouldn't say it right. You know, because that's just where I'm at in my own being sometimes. And, you know, some questions to ask yourself is like, how do I demonstrate commitment to my wife? You know, told God that I would, but actually, how do I apply that together?
Right. And just one last thing on this is that, am I letting him in? Like, a lot of us, for whatever reason, we tend to put walls up, right? We put a mask on. And it's so funny because when I sit down across the table from another woman, I can tell them the most gory, intimate, bizarre things about myself and my life. But when it comes to my husband, I have a really, really, really hard time expressing my emotions, right? Trying to understand trying to understand his mode of thinking, trying to explain my own. And this is one thing that we've done a ton of work around this area, mainly because I'm weird about it. You know, like you can have emotions, I cannot, okay? And, you know, we actually have something up here that I'll give out at the end or at some point that helps with expressing these things and conflict resolution. And it's actually using the St. Francis prayer. It's pretty cool. So, 4.
4, each partner should be autonomous except in matters affecting the other partner, the family, or the relationship, or society as a whole. Now, autonomous, freedom to control their own affairs, right? The opposite of this whole, I don't know if they put the self-governing thing, but now, Megan needs to be allowed to run her own life, right? She has a life. We both have our own worlds that we live in, and that's where it gets confusing sometimes because, you know, Megan used the term married single life, right? Yes, we're married, but we're both just doing our own things all the time and crisscross and kiss each other on the cheek from time to time. And I get it, like sometimes there are variables that we just don't get to see each other, whether it's AA life or work life or things like that. So I'm not saying that like there has to be this big upheaval between that, but we got to work with what we got on the difference. I've got written down, as human beings, our self-will takes over occasionally and we want to run the show. This type of thinking sabotages our freedom and our relationship. Now, that's that fight between what makes us feel better or what actually makes us better. And there's a huge difference there because A, we know feelings lie, but B, yeah, that first easy way or, that crappy TV show and I should be paying the bills or whatever, but I have to really sit down and it's hard for me sometimes to not get distracted by something that makes me feel better instead of actually doing something that makes me a better person.
So one thing that we need to remember, right? You know how when you get into a relationship and they're like all you can think about and you want to be with them all the time and, it's just so great, you get lost in it. We are not Meg, Ave. I don't know how to combine our names. I don't know.
I like Dagan, actually.
Dagan, okay. Right? Big dig. We are two individuals, right, who can stand on our own 2 feet, right? And I have the right to be wrong and learn from that and make amends if needed, right? I also have the right to be right. But when it comes to our relationship as a whole, am I speaking for him? Like, oh yeah, we'll commit to that when I haven't talked to him? Am I, here's a serious, real example. I kind of live a day at a time. I plan things and then I forget about it. And, it'll be like when I do my 11-step inventory at night, and it says, is there something you need to talk with someone about immediately? I say, am I current with my sponsor? Am I current with my husband? Because I will literally be driving to the airport and be like, oh, hey, babe, forgot to tell ya, I'm going to be out of town for 3 days, right? And that does affect him, right? Just got to go let the dog out. Even, for example, I had a late work night this past week. And I was busy, and I didn't think to message him, I'll be home later than normal. But then I get mad at him because my phone keeps going off. Like, leave me, don't you understand I'm busy? No, he doesn't, because you haven't communicated to you. He thinks you're stuffed in a trunk somewhere, So the thing is that am I aware of what does affect him? Because I'm just a little bubble of selfishness, right? Like, it doesn't really impact your life that I'm going to be out of town. He'll be fine. He'll be cool, right? He does most of the cooking anyway. He'll survive. Am I looking at these things, right? Am I taking responsibility for my own actions, right? Or am I blaming him for my actions, right? It sounds like so simple, right? But for whatever reason, for me, it's not.
A couple things. In this whole autonomous thing, or, we should be autonomous with the unity of the relationship in the forefront. So I get to be me and she gets to be her, but because of the fact that we are together as one unit, one united, I have to have that in the forefront as well. So, and I have to ask those questions like, am I taking care of myself in a way that affects her positively? Because me constantly eating like crap and me staying up way too late, geeking out on doing design work and stuff like that, then I get up the next morning and I'm crabby and I'm snippy at her, and well, wait a minute, no. How am I treating myself so that it can be a positive influence or positive towards her? One question I do want to and throw things out here from the group is, what are some different kinds of goals that are for a relationship? Anyone? What's a goal that you want in a relationship?
Or that you have.
Or that you have?
Improved communication.
Oh, we can help you there. We have taken so many courses on communication. We'll talk.
Ambitions.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Not being the center.
Oh,
What was that?
parenting. I'm sorry, what was that one? There you go.
Perfect. And those are great examples, and I'm sure if we sat here and went around the room, we could have dozens more of them. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the question. Of those different goals that we have, how much have we actually communicated this goal with our spouse?
Have you had an informed group conscience?
Or is it just, you're doing it wrong? I worked with a guy that, he was out doing his thing for years, came back into the house, just like the book talks about, tried to kind of take over the wearing the trousers portion of the relationship, and he calls me, he's like, Jesus, I can't even put the dishes in the dishwasher the right way. She yells at me because of that. I'm like, well, you know why? Because you're doing it wrong. Because the way that she's been doing it, because she's had to run this entire household for this long. So that's what it's all about, is now we're back to this communication thing where I have a bad ability to just expect Megan to be thinking on the same plane as I do. Well, if we haven't figured it out already, we are not. She's all left brain, I'm all right brain.
Can I give an example?
Of course. Okay,
so here's, this is going to show you how awesome of a human I am. So I get irritated, right? So I will come home, I've had a long day, and I go to the grocery store. I've got the groceries on the way home, so I've done something for our relationship. That's about the extent of it because I don't cook them. But so I'm carrying in all this heavy stuff, and he's sitting on his phone doing this, right? And I'm like, and he'll go, do you want help? And I go, no, right? And I'll put it in the kitchen, and I will resentfully stomp back out to the car, get the rest of the groceries, slam the door, put them away, right? And he just sits there. What a terrible human, right? So, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. I've trained him to sit there. Because every single time he's ever asked for help, I say, no, I'm good. Because I can't ask for help. Because I want to be overly autonomous, right? I don't want to be weak. And my goodness, he should just get up and help without asking. But I've trained him not to help me. And then I get mad over it. I mean, this is the insanity. So when it comes to something like this is on me. I need to address this. I need to talk to my sponsor. I need to do some inventory about why allowing him to help me with groceries somehow is a reflection upon me. Right? It sounds insane, right? But you guys do it somewhere too. It might look a little different, right? So while we practice these traditions in our relationship, the number one thing I can do for mine is stay connected to God and my sponsor, because I'm a mess, right? And there's a lot of still unresolved gunk within me.
You know, and kind of touch base on a couple of the things you guys had mentioned. One of them was like money, to buy a house, that type, the financial side of it. And, you know, romance and finance. Well, we're talking about both right now, and that can be chaos in a relationship no matter what, with or without being alcoholics. So and once again, these are some of those courageous conversations that you have to sit down and talk about each other, because we are not on the same page. Like, as humans, it's just not going to happen. An example would be, it's nothing on paper, but we have this kind of agreement that neither of us are going to make large purchases without asking the other person. Mind you, we have a joint account, but we both also have our own separate accounts. So it's not like I'm dipping into her money if I want to go out and buy 3 new pairs of shoes or whatever the case may be. But, you know, trust me, I would have a garage with even more motorcycles than I do now if I could. But, and I did, to be fair, before we got married, I told her, okay, this is the number of motorcycles I have now. That number can go up or down at any time over the course of this relationship, just so that you're aware. And she agreed to it, so we're good there.
And that's something that, for whatever reason, right, I'm cool with, right? Now, if he was like, the number of cats I have may go up at any time, that is not negotiable in my life. I'm allergic to cats, right? So it's, you know, there's some of these things that, why a lot of sponsors recommend that you should be through the steps before you enter a relationship is so you can at least start working some of this gunk out. In addition to that, I am probably just now a little bit confident in who I am and what I like. I don't know, right? I mean, I still don't totally know, right? I honestly totally don't know where I see my life in 10 years. Oh, whatever, right? But I need to know what is important to me, what are my goals, where do I see my life going, right? What do I want out of life? What's negotiable? What's non-negotiable? If I don't know these things, it's the blind leading the blind, man, or just trying to run into something, and the first thing I run into, I take, right?
And really quick to touch base on kind of that early relationship thing is what I always tell my guys is that, 3 months into this thing, you want to jump into a relationship, but the truth of the matter is that the person that you are right now is not going to be the same person that you are in a year from now. It's not going to be the same person when you're done. You're not going to be the same person. By design, you're not going to be the same person. So why are you going to dive into this relationship and now all of a sudden, because you're telling me, okay, this is who I am. Well, you don't like who you are to begin with, and that's why you're going through this process, and we want to change some things in our lives. So now all of a sudden, it just creates more chaos than anything. And like I said, we've lived through it, of the chaos. I'm not really sure how we lived through it, but suicide, homicide. But like, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. So
All right.
work
So,
on yourself.
Tradition 5. Each marriage, relationship, family, whatever you want to say in there, has but one primary purpose: to serve as an expression of God's love. Right? I think we know very clearly what our primary purpose is within Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And I take that seriously, like dead seriously. Do I take my primary purpose in my marriage seriously? Not as seriously as I do in AA, right? And the thing is that it's funny because our relationship consists of 3. Dave and I growing towards God, right? You can see the triangle. I'm not very good at, that's a triangle, right? Hopefully, as we grow towards God, we grow closer, right? But if he's growing towards motorcycles and I'm growing towards dogs, we're growing in different directions. So in your relationship, are you growing in similar directions, right? And it doesn't mean that your partner needs to be in AA. That's not what I'm saying, right? But having the same primary purpose of expressing love within your relationship and where you're going, right? And, you know, we don't do this perfectly, right? But what does that look like, right? So, and again, don't do this perfectly, right? But to encourage my partner's spiritual growth, right? To love him and be kind even when I want to strangle him, right? And then to serve him when I want to be selfish and lay on the couch and eat bonbons all day, right? And it's not that there's anything wrong with laying on the couch and watching or eating bonbons, right? But if I look at my relationship as a whole, do I serve him, right? Do I even consider that? And one thing I think that's kind of cool is that Dave has family. He has a ton of friends. He has a lot of guys he sponsors, right? But he only has one wife. One. God has called me to show Dave his love in our marriage. And I wish I took that more as a responsibility than I do, right? And the thing is that I tend to operate out of self rather than God, right? Megan's preferences, and I get really mad over petty things, right? Like you left the toaster out, right? Or I'm keeping score. I do more, you do less. I show you more affection, right? Here's a good one. You're doing it wrong. Here's an example. One night, I got home, and, you know, it'd been kind of a long day, but whatever. And I normally walk in through the front door, but for whatever reason, this particular night, I walked into the back door, which is our kitchen. And oh my God, it was a disaster. I mean, there are pots and pans and sauce, and I mean, like, it was bad. Like, it's never super tidy, but it was bad, right? Instantly, I'm raging. I am raging because what am I thinking? Who's gonna have to clean this up now? Because you don't clean it up right anyway, right? And I mean, I am fuming. Right off our kitchen is our dining room. And I walk into the dining room, and he had the table set, and he had food out for me. Nothing for him because it's late. He did this for me because he knew I had a long day, and he wanted to feed me because he knows I eat like a child, right? But the thing is, I get so obsessed and focused on the messy kitchen that I can't see the dinner. And I do this in all areas of my life. All areas of my life, right? I get so focused on the stupid, petty little things that I forget what my primary purpose is. And if I believe the things I say, right, like the people in my life have been placed here by God, and my job is to point them towards God, does me blowing up over a sponsee being late, not doing their homework, somebody interrupting me in the middle of my workday, my mother calling me, how dare she? Doesn't she know I'm busy? That is not me fulfilling my primary purpose. And the thing is that if my primary purpose is love, and that's really the only thing I focus on, what would my life look like? If it was only about giving and receiving love, what would that look like, right? I wouldn't have to it wouldn't have anything to even do with Dave, right? It would have everything to do with me fulfilling what I feel as though God has called me to do, right? What if I don't judge? Like, that was a stupid joke, right? Or nice try buying me a gift. What if I stopped waiting for him to extend love and I just gave it, right? You know, the whole silent treatment thing. What's wrong? Nothing. Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong, right? And for me, what if I could just let the wall down and receive his love? And know that he's loving me for no other reason than that is his primary purpose. He doesn't want anything except to allow me to love him, right? So if we could just give love and receive it, acceptance would come naturally.
And to kind of speak to what Megan was just saying, is that in the beginning of our relationship, I was the fixer, man. Every time she was mad, what can I do? Dive on that grenade. Okay, we got to make this right. We got to make this right. Every single time. And just being that overbearing, it's okay, everything will be fine, you know, and just trying to talk her off the edge. And I was taught along the way that I'm not being helpful in any way, shape, or form by doing that, because I'm allowing her to act like that, you know? And I tell you what, man, the first time she started up on me and I didn't respond the way I normally did, she was not impressed. Like, we're never talking, you know, I'm sure that was like number 24, 25 that we broke up along the way there. But there has to be that portion of it where I have found myself consciously having to pause and being like, you know as well as I do, is that going down this road right now, when she's mad, there's gonna be no solution at that. Mm-hmm. So I just gotta let her be mad if she needs to be. And then at some point, and she needs to do the same thing for me, and then at some point when we can actually both be civil, sit down and communicate about this thing.
And can I jump in? And the thing is that I don't know where this comes from, and I just haven't found it applicable in my life, right? But you know, you hear about everything being 50-50. Our relationship is not 50-50, okay? There are times where he might be going through something, and it's 80-20. There are lots of times where I'm going through something, and he carries me, right? This idea, though, of everything having to be like 50-50, both practically and emotionally, right? I was like sick, super sick. Was it last weekend? God, it seems like so long ago, right? And so I couldn't do the things that I normally do on the weekends, like clean. So Dave cleaned, right? Not like the normal separation of chores that we do, but everything. right? He didn't just leave it messy for me, like, oh, now that you're feeling better, go clean that up, which I might have done, to be honest with you. So the thing is that, can I be understanding to him? Can I see him, right? There are times where, okay, who here, let's say a friend, a partner, a family member, comes to you with a problem and they're hurting. Who here immediately interjects a solution? Yeah, me too. Did they ask you for one? Right? So I'm that way too. Why? I need to be needed, right? My worth is in my ability to fix you. My ego needs you to be dependent upon me, right? I need these things. Like I need air, right? But like Dave, when he was fixing all my issues, right? He literally robbed me of wisdom. If I fail, I gain wisdom and confidence. If it doesn't fail, I gain confidence, right? God will not do for me what I can do for myself. Why would I demand that of my partner? Go ahead.
Hold on there. 6.
Let's do 6.
We ought not be overly supportive spiritually, emotionally, or physically to the relationship, lest problems of ego gratification divert us from our primary purpose. We've got to be supportive. We should be there spiritually, emotionally. Now, I can't carry her emotionally and spiritually. There's a difference there, because she needs she needs to be plugged into a sponsor. She needs to be plugged into God. More importantly, I can be there to try to help, but when we get to that point where my happiness depends on her being the jester of my life, and it's a lot of response. I was just having this conversation with somebody. It's a lot of responsibility to put on her. So now my happiness is her expectation. She needs to make me happy at all times, or I'm gonna be miserable, and then it gets to be her fault, right? That I'm not happy. I can't do that to her, and she doesn't deserve that. So when I'm struggling, I need to reach out to that sponsor, and kind of like we touched base a little bit earlier on this idea of there's certain things that when you're in a relationship with somebody that's also in or one of them at least is in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, we used to use, I think you need to call your sponsor like a weapon. We truly, truly did. And we had to have that conversation and be like, wait a minute now. When one of us says that, the other person has to take that into account and has to accept that information from that other person, and to know that it's not them trying to beat you down. Have you prayed today? Is another way of saying you're acting crazy today, okay? Let's just... And she gets to say that to me, and I get to say that to her, and I don't get to get mad at her for saying that, and she doesn't get to get mad at me for saying that, because we both had to have that conversation and say that this is out of love. This is out of our hearts. This isn't trying to pick on you, but you need to talk to somebody about it.
Yep. And, how arrogant of me to think I can meet all of his needs, right? I want to be all things to all people at all times, quite frankly. Why? Because then you'll need me, and then I'm worthy, right? I have value. The thing is that while I can't take care of him, I do need to take care of my spiritual condition, like he said, to be going to that sponsor. If we are going to have one of those big conversations where we're going to have an informed group conscience, you better bet I've talked to my sponsor about what we're going to be talking about, and hopefully take her guidance. But the thing is that our separateness, our individuality is actually our strength, right? The fact that we are very different and we can approach problems from different angles, that makes us pretty useful, right? I cannot tell you the amount of stuff this guy has taught me. And it promotes this healthy relationship of equals, right? Rather than me being I try not to even use the word helpful anymore, because to me, and because I'm sick, I'm here and the person I'm helping is down here, right? I try to say useful. So the thing is that, can I see our differences as unique expressions of God? Or do I demand he does and thinks that everything should be the way I am, right? And again, good communication is vital. It is vital to this, both for me and to him, right? Because there will be times where he's had a day with the boss, right? And instantly, I want to fix the things. And instead, what I'll do is go, man, that must be really hard. How can I support you through this? Right? And I try to identify with the emotion. I try to give compassion, because it's really uncomfortable for me to sit with him in his discomfort. And I don't mean sit with him in his sickness. I mean bear the burden with him instead of run away from it or try to fix him, which to me is just much, 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 much more easy. And when we have a disagreement, right, can we hear God's voice over our own? Or are we so loud and emotional and angry that there is definitely no ability for God to work through that? And again, this is where we come to this point where we can complement each other, right? Our dependence upon a power greater than ourselves is mutual, right? Our independence is equal, right? We are both equally independent. What would that look like in an unhealthy way? Well, it could be, I can't ever leave his side, don't leave me, right? Or, I'm never around, see you later. Or it's like we're in public together, and I've done this, and I act like he doesn't exist. That's not quite healthy, right? And then finally, our obligation, right? Our commitment to the relationship and to each other is reciprocal. To me, that is a healthy relationship. Dependence upon something greater than self or the relationship, right, is mutual between the two of us. Our independence is equal, right? No one's dominating, no one is being dominated. And our obligation and commitment to each other and the relationship is reciprocal.
This communication is a great example of something that is 100% vital in a relationship. And truthfully, like, to sit down, and yes, it may be my wife, but to sit down to anybody and just talk about, like, my emotions or my feelings, like, it's just awkward, man. You know, it's just uncomfortable. It is. Let's be honest here. You know, it's like, well, you know, you come in and you just kind of like walk right past me and you don't even acknowledge my, like, I feel like a pansy sometimes. But it's the reality of it. It's like, okay, I don't exist. So then instead of me saying, hey, how's it going? I'll just sit there and stew, or then she'll go upstairs and I'll sneak down in the basement and go hang out in my office and just wait for her to come down and realize her wrong. Still waiting for her to realize her wrong.
Sometimes I know he's waiting for me to realize my wrongs, and I don't do it out of spite.
Realities. These are absolute realities. However, for us to have, okay, not to throw you under the bus, but an example is I came home and she was cooking dinner, and she had,
Which is a really rare event.
like number 3. No, just kidding. So she's cooking, and so she's got things going on, hot stuff bubbling over here and whatnot, and she's like, hey, could you just let me know? It had something to do with the Wi-Fi, right? So I was like, okay. So I start explaining to her, well, Oh, it was about paying a bill. So you have to go on to
They don't need the details.
this web. Well, and I started to. That's pretty much exactly what you did that time too. I see what you just did there. Where that's exactly what it was. Is I was trying to explain to her, and she's just like, just explain it to me later.
Well, he was supposed to see I was busy.
Right.
Like, I can't write things down when I'm doing this.
And-
Like, doesn't he get it?
And I turn around and I start walking out of the kitchen, and I stopped and I come back and I was like, wait a minute, that wasn't fair at all. You asked me a question, I tried to explain it to you, and you bit my head off. That wasn't fair. And-
So my response should have been, you know what, babe? Over dinner or another time, can you tell me how to do bill pay? Which is exactly what it was about. I don't know how to do bill pay.
And I've done the same thing to her, right? Whereas normally that reaction would have been me walk out and avoid her in a 3-level house for the next 3 hours.
And, you know, with him like standing up and being like, hey, Megan, that's not acceptable, I learned from that, right? Because sometimes I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't see my own rudeness. I don't see my own selfishness. I don't see my own attention seeking. And it's not that I'm trying to be dismissive. In fact, I'm trying to cook the dude dinner, which I don't do very often. So he should really see that I'm trying to love him, right?
Tensions are usually high when she's in the kitchen.
It is. It's not cool. And, but the thing is that when we communicate, right? Like, I do not appreciate it when you ask me a question and then walk away, right? Because half the time, we don't even realize what we're doing, or I don't, I guess, right? Not only do I not realize what I'm doing, but how it affects him, right? Like, going back to the dog example, I will spend 20 minutes with the dog when I get home and go, hey, babe, and walk away. I don't know, I kissed him, I acknowledged him, right? It wouldn't bother me because I'm different in that mode, right? Like, I'm whatever. But it does impact him. It hurts his heart. Now, that doesn't mean he's less than me or more than me. It just means that he sees certain actions differently than I do. But I need to know that because all I know is me. And I don't want to know me sometimes. I have something up here that can help with that, right? Dave and I took, I'm not going to go into details, but we got involved in a really overcommitted, like for months, marriage course, right? And it was actually for couples on the brink of divorce. And
Imagine my dismay when I found this out. Like, are we
I just-
okay?
again-
Like,
again, right? Communication. All I said was, hey, babe, do you want to go to a marriage retreat that's supposed to help with communication? He goes, yeah. He's telling his sponsor about it. His sponsor knows about this. And he's like, Dave, you should maybe look into this a little more. Dave looks it up, and the first thing you see is your relationship falling apart, right? But get this. He doesn't come and talk to me about it right away. He stews on it for a good 12 hours, right? And then it's like, babe, are you unhappy in our relationship? And I'm like, where's this coming from, you know? So anyway, communication. We're better now, kind of.
work in progress.
Yes. So it is, this is similar to something that Dave and I attempt to do nightly. We do not do it nightly. But we have a list of questions, right? And we write our answers to it and what emotions are tied to that. And then we explain it to each other. Sounds lame, I know. But not only has it allowed me into his heart, it's forced me to allow him into mine. And not only that, like, I've learned some things about me. I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? I don't like that, right? Because if I'm not examining my life, it's going nowhere. right? Because I don't know until I interact with it. And inventory, questioning, things like this forces me to interact with some things. So, most of you have probably heard of the St. Francis prayer, right? We want to understand rather than be understood, right? I want to love rather than be loved. I mean, I don't. I want him to love me. Actually, I think I said that the right way, or what I meant. I want him to love me and express his love more than I want to show mine, right? It's backwards. The prayer says, my job is to not worry about receiving the love, but to give it. So what you do is you can do it whether or not you have a conflict, but this is good when there's a conflict. And you talk about what's going on, right? And he gets to say what he needs to say, and I don't get to interrupt, and I don't get to correct, right? And then I need to say that back to him, right? Then he gets to talk about how he feels. And then I get to mirror that back to him. I know, it sounds lame, but it's super helpful. And then it's my turn. For example, we had a blow up about a hose. Literally a garden hose, and leaving the spigot on, right? It irked me. Like, that's not how my dad did it. My dad turned off the water and rolled up the hose. Therefore, that's the way it's done. Now, of course, I don't say this, right? I just resentfully go out there, turn the water off, crank up the hose, make a lot of irritating noises as I'm doing it, and letting the resentment build and build and build and build and build, right? I don't know, divine intervention or something. But one day, it came to, because this is going on for the whole summer, right? And, I had this thought, right? And I went to Dave and I was like, can you help me understand why you don't turn the water off and you leave the hose out, even though you know it irritates me? And his response was, number one, it's easier. And number two, that's how my dad did it. So we were mad at each other, right, over the same thing, but I don't see these ingrained things within me, right? These core ideas that bleed into every aspect of my life, including a freaking garden hose, right? But I'm using that against him. Yes, so let's go ahead and break. If you don't have one of the handouts, I have some up here. If you want the St. Francis Prayer conflict resolution thing, come get one.
All right, we will get plugged in. Next tradition is tradition 7. Each partner ought to strive to be fully self-supporting, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Now, what do we mean by that? It is 100% my responsibility for my spiritual, emotional, and physical health. And it is also Megan's responsibility for hers. We can't carry each other on this thing. We both need this. We both need a spiritual connection with God. We both need our emotional stability, and we both need to take care of ourselves. And being, what's the word I'm even looking for? Having the expectation that she's supposed to carry me through some of this stuff, it's a really great way to have a bad, dysfunctional relationship and to create sickness in this relationship. I can't allow her, and like Megan said, the best way I can put it is the relationship has to be 100%, but the percentages per person continually change. Like she said, sometimes it's 10-90, sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes it's 70-30. And those numbers will go back and forth. So one of us is going to have to pick up the slack if the other person's struggling a little bit. But it can't always be leaning on one side or the other, I guess is the best way I can put it.
Yep. So basically, I cannot look for everything I need in him.
I mean, I think that's the simplest way I can sum it up, right? Is that sometimes I have a tendency to go out, right? To seek worldly things, to seek your love and approval, rather than going up. And if I'm dependent upon him, right? And I did say he has carried me, and I truly feel that he has at times. But it's brief, and it doesn't mean that I'm not relying upon God. It means I'm very, very sick, usually emotionally or physically. But if I'm dependent upon someone to meet my needs, I'm in trouble, right? Because Jude talked about it. He has a bad ticker. He might die. Then what am I going to do? I mean, that sounds harsh, right? But I got to be able to stand on my own 2 feet if this thing were to end, both practically, as far as paying our bills. Like, this might sound bad, but when we bought our house, I made sure that that payment would be something I could make alone, because he does have a bad heart. What if one of us gets hurt and we can't work? Right? I don't know about you guys, but I'm not super adulty, and I don't have that weird insurance stuff. So the thing, I have health insurance, whatever. So the thing is that can I survive alone? Or can I take care of our financial obligations on my own? Because I do think that's an important thing to look at, right? Am I in a relationship financially self-supporting? Because a lot of times we do look at this in regards to money, and we'll use money as a weapon, right? The person who makes more might use it to control the person who doesn't. The person who makes less might feel like less of a person because of that. So the thing is that we want things to be equal within our relationship, but we are responsible for ourselves. Yeah.
We will go to 8. Our marriage or relationship should forever remain free giving and mutual. I truly look at this relationship as a gift, right? But I have to continue to remember that it's precious. I was given the opportunity to be her husband. This isn't a job. This isn't work. Although there is work involved in creating a positive relationship, this shouldn't be something that that I just have to exist with until one of us gets to die, and then we get to,
Gets to.
if that's the type of mentality that I have in a relationship, that's not a relationship I should be in, period. I truly am grateful that I have her in my life. And those are good times and in bad times. I'm still grateful that I have her and allowed. And it's got to be mutual, because I have to give her love, and in turn, I don't have to. I want to. But
You choose to.
But I choose, and part of my commitment to her is just of that, and that is the same for her back to me. And you sow what you reap in this situation. So if I'm shut off all the time and frustrated and just don't want to deal with stuff all the time, that's what I'm going to get in return. And once again, why? Why do I just want to exist in a relationship? We could easily. It's not that hard of work to just exist in a relationship. As Megan said, there are times where it's felt like we just had roommates. And those were some of the hardest times along the way, is when it's amazing that 100% or that give and take thing. What if both of you are only at 20%, right, at the same time? That can get really ugly really fast. One of you or both of you have to acknowledge that, and we just have to pick up one side of it or the other, because I can really easily suck her down into my chaos pretty fast if I want to. I can manipulate the situation. I can just destroy I can create more misery out of very little.
Another part of this too is, where do I get my worth? Right? Am I getting it in job promotions, titles, AA, right? And I'm also not saying you should get your worth in your significant other, right? Because again, that's starting to make them your higher power. But where do I get my worth? And to be honest with you, usually in producing things. I like to be busy. I like to get things done. I like to be productive, right? I want my Vita to say Megan Frankel, child of God, and that's it. I want to truly believe that my value comes from that which created me. But if I'm being honest with you, I'm just not quite there yet. I'm better. I've made great strides. But I'm not going to lie to you. And the thing is as well is that I also need to know what I need and what I want in a relationship. I need to communicate to him. For example, there are times when I get home and it's been a rough day and I am wound so tight that I'm like a ticking time bomb, right? So I have communicated with him. There will be times when I go upstairs, if I go into my office and shut the door, it's because I need some time. It's not because I'm angry with you, right? Because he sees that without a conversation and it's like, what did I do? I mean, she just got home. I need to communicate that. What needs I have. I need to know the needs I have. I mean, seriously, have you ever really looked at like, what do I need in this relationship? And have you ever been brave enough to express it? Very rarely. I think that's the one thing that I've been able to express. And we also have to look at what are our expectations. I mean, some people maybe learned about relationship from, I learned about marriage from my parents who are still married today, but they hate each other. You know? They weren't fully self-supporting. They stayed together for not spiritual reasons, right? Like raising me. I'm the not spiritual reason. Or some people, it might be a really, 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 really terrible upbringing, right? Where, if you have a job and you put dinner on the table, I'm good with it, right? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with either of those. But I can't expect him to give what he doesn't know I want, right? So when I am willing to ask for these things, right, to communicate these things, it promotes unity, right? The other thing is that when my connection with God is strong, I don't seek rewards, right? I don't seek approval. I don't seek, again, when my connection with God is strong, right? I can give freely without keeping score. I can also receive freely without feeling uncomfortable, right? Have you ever had that? Have you had someone do something nice for you and you're like, let me pay you? That actually happened to me the other day. Some people changed the tire on my car and I had to do everything within me to not say, let me pay you. To allow them to freely serve and do something kind for someone, Because how do you feel when you do something kind for someone? Good. And I'm going to deny someone else the opportunity to feel good about themselves, right?
Sorry, really quick. I had an opportunity a couple years ago where I ended up I was asked to drive somebody to a treatment center in Sioux Falls. And by being asked, I mean, I was asked at like 3:30 on a Saturday, and I was on the road by 4. Like, it was go time, right? And so I grabbed one of my sponsees. I was like, get an overnight bag. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Let's do this. Go. So we grabbed this kid and took him down to Sioux Falls. And then when I got back, the person that had asked me, she's like, well, here, take some money, you know, and I looked at her and I was like, yeah, but if I take that money, then it's not service work. And I just turned around and I walked away, and she just kind of looked at me like, okay, you know, like that's not the point. The point is that this cat needed to be somewhere, you know, it was life. Literally, it was winter, and this dude started walking a 40-mile trek in February, made it 15 miles with a sweatshirt on. Somebody gave him the ride the rest of the way to Bismarck. My mindset, dude, if you're willing to walk 40 miles for sobriety, I'll drive you the rest of the way. It's cool, man. It's like, but it was insane. Sorry to get off on.
That's okay. Just one final thing about that is when I focus on giving him all the things I want him to give me, right? And I don't mean materially. I mean, sometimes I want attention, and he's the one on the phone, right? Sometimes I want to cuddle. Sometimes I want to be left alone, right? Sometimes I always want to receive patience and kindness. When I focus on giving those things to him, oh my God, he ticks me off. And here's why. Because when I give him those things, he starts giving it back to me. And he does it better than me, right? It's like he raises the bar. Like, no, I am trying to be the good spiritual partner in this relationship. But seriously, try it. Try it. When you're unhappy, especially when you're unhappy in your relationship, try giving your partner everything you want him or her to give you.
Without expectations.
Yep. Blows my mind. Again, easier said than done, but blows my mind.
And she absolutely nailed it right there, is because if I focus on her needs and she focuses on my needs, they're both met. And it's not this selfish, because I'm way used to being selfish. Tradition 9, a family or relationship should be flexible in its organization, and our group conscience may appoint certain persons responsible to serve various functions.
So with this, right, also in Tradition 8, it said, you know, we're non-professional. And what that means is, like, he doesn't try to be a plumber, and I don't try to be a lawyer, right? Things that we're not qualified for. We need, you know, special committees. We need to hire people to do things like that. But in Tradition 9, we get to look at, I mean, this is the way I view it, my strengths and his strengths, right? When we need to, like, move furniture around, paint the house a different color, we're looking at trying to do some stuff with our back porch, that's all him. Because I'd be like, just make it gray. I mean, I just can't see. I have no vision, no creativity. I mean, nothing. Like, I'm trying to think of an example, and I'm sure you can maybe, but I got nothing, right? When it comes to things that are more analytical, right? Trying to figure out how to balance things. Budgets, right? How much money we need to make sure that we can pay for the house, right? Those are my kind of things, right? So we identify our own strengths and weaknesses and allow that person to serve in that area. But it's not like dictating, right? Like we're overly
organized, and I'm telling him everything he has to do, and I'm giving him orders, and I'm expecting obedience, right? He gets to do and excel at the things he is good at. I get to do and excel at the things that I am good at. And some of the things that neither of us are, good or passionate for, we just do together, right? And we work totally opposite, right? I'm like, get everything done and then rest. And Dave's like, we work a little, we take a break. We work a little, we take a break. And again, spiritually fit, that goes really well, right? Not spiritually fit, he takes a break and I keep going and I have a resentment, right? Well, here's the thing. Why does he take a break? Well, he's 8 years older than me. He's got a bad heart. He's on his feet at work all day anyway. I sit on my butt. Maybe he needs one. He's not doing it to irritate me. Shocking. Shocking.
Now, and here's on the flip side of that is that, and this is something we had to work through too, because like she said, when she gets home, if she's got this list of things to do,
It's go time.
It's go time. Mind you, okay, and then
At midnight.
Right. True story. And I've got this set of things that I need to be done, and when it's done, I'm going to sit down. So here I am sitting on the couch watching her go back and forth going, yep, now I feel like a jackass, right? Now all of a sudden I know she's pissed at me because, but I'm freaking exhausted, So now I feel guilty for finishing my things and sitting down. And she might not even be mad at me. She's just go time. So it's this whole conflict of like, okay, now do I have to get back up and run my butt off even more just because she's in motion? Well, she might be going till 4 a.m. I don't know. And so there's that communication. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Are we square with that? Mm-hmm. And if she says yes, all right, there you go. I did this, I did this, I did this. If you need me, I'll be downstairs. Peace. I'm out,
Yep.
And that has to be that conversation and that agreement, And if this, and this wasn't enough to take off of the list to be helpful, she's going to tell me out on the front side, And there's that communication once again.
Mm-hmm. I had something, but I lost it. It'll probably come back.
Tradition 10. A relationship should avoid heated controversy. Dun, dun, dun. So, the truth of the matter is that I don't recall ever being in a heated argument where I went, oh, I totally see your point now. Everything's changed. Let's move on with life. Ain't gonna happen, people. It just, no. Because I get angry, she gets frustrated, voices raised, voices raised, voices raised. I worked with a guy one time, and we went out for a smoke break, and all of a sudden he's telling me how obnoxious and overbearing his wife is, right? And I go, okay, try something next time. Next time she comes over and nags at you about whatever, don't talk back. Just get up and do it. Don't argue back to her and just get it done. And I go, and see what her reaction is, right? And I talked to him a couple weeks later. He's like, dude, seriously. It was like a deer in the headlights she looked at me. Because the truth of the matter is that if this is the way it's been, is where one person gets frustrated, the other person gets frustrated, this person starts to yell, this person, you're feeding each other, and now all of a sudden it's this knockdown, drag-out screaming match with each other, or the possibility of being. Now the difference being is that if this person is yelling and this person isn't, at some point the person that's yelling, they're going to realize they're the only jerk in the room, and they're going to stop yelling. It's just the way things happen, right? So then it's not going to escalate. And he's like, I can't believe that actually worked. Well, it's not that hard. And Megan and I don't do a whole lot of screaming back and forth at each other. It's just not how we argue. Like I said, it's more of snippy comments and then
Passive-aggressive comments and shutting down is more our style.
Yes, that's a great way to put it.
So, another way to look at this is that we should not allow outside issues to detract us from our primary purpose of love, right? And if something needs to be addressed, if there's conflict, we should focus on discussion rather than argument, right? So what's the point of a discussion, right? What's the resolution to a conflict? You can define them for yourselves, right? But for me, a discussion is for me to gain understanding of his point of view or whatever it is we're talking about, right? To seek to understand. And a conflict is something we disagree on, and the solution to that, or the reason for the solution to a conflict would be to find a solution. Wasn't that a tongue twister? So the thing is that can I, A, call a group conscience and invite in a loving God of my understanding, right? Can I, B, practice courtesy? I am so much nicer to strangers on the street than I am my own husband, right? I don't know why that is, right? It might be proximity. I'm always around him, right? It might be, we're married, he can't leave me. I mean, I don't know. Probably because we know each other really well, therefore I also know the things that really irritate me, and it makes me angry sometimes that I can't change them. But can I be respectful during these conversations? Can I keep outside issues? Let's say we have different political views, right? That's okay. It's even okay to still discuss them. Now, if you start arguing about them, not cool. If the discussion turns into a fight, not cool. Even if we have a conflict, right? When I sit down with him and I'm super invested in the results of that conversation, I'm in trouble. And here's why. Because I'm then having the conversation to change him, to somehow get my way, to manipulate him. If my only goal is to find a possible solution, that means it doesn't have to be mine, right? And if it has to be mine, and 9 times out of 10 it does, I'm not practicing step 3, right? I am trying to get my way, and my way usually doesn't work. We will move on, but there's one thing. I remembered what I was going to say. When you get to know someone or you spend a lot of time with them, you get to know their quirks, the things you absolutely love about them, and the things that irritate you about them, right? Because there are so many things about me that irritate Dave, and vice versa, and we can say that and not get, hurt. I mean, it's just the truth, right? But all those little things that irritate me about him are so outweighed by the 3 million reasons I love him. But if it's the other way around, I gotta make a decision, right? Is this the way it should be? Because remember, you're making a choice. You're not stuck. That is the number one thing that irks me. And I do it too. I've been there. I'm stuck. I'm a victim. I'm danged if I do, danged if I don't. You have a choice. And doing nothing is also making a choice. That wasn't my point, though. My point was that you start to form a story about them, a lie, right? Dave was talking about our example of working differently, right? And I have some residual crackhead tweaks left. And it's just the way it is. And I will take facts, right? I will take facts, right? So, fact, Amber is sitting back there. I'm pretty sure she's glaring at me, right? Fact, Amber is sitting there. Fact, through Megan's perception, she's glaring at me. I just made up a story, right? And I do that about all people at all times, quite frankly. So one thing that I have to do, I have to shred my story. First of all, I have to be awake enough to realize it is a story, right? He's not taking breaks because he's lazy. He's taking breaks because he needs a break. Fact, no perceptions, right? But I will form a story. Let's say I go with lazy. That's all I'll see, right? He didn't put the dishes away. He didn't walk the dog. He didn't do whatever, right? And now I have a story. And it's all I'm going to see, like the example of the messy kitchen and not seeing the dinner. So the thing is that every single day I pray. And I work steps 6 and 7 around this. But all I'm going to say is that within that 6-step prayer, every single day, I am asking God to help me become willing to let go of the story I have about Dave and the story I have about myself, because they're delusion. And they will rip us apart. My stories will rip us apart. Go ahead.
Tradition 11. Practicing the principle of attraction rather than promotion protects our humility and relationships. We kind of just break it down to the basics of there is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I like that that's the golden rule. And the silver rule is do not do for others what they need to do for themselves. I really like that one as well, because I can do my best to try to carry Megan spiritually. But the truth of the matter is that am I actually helping her by trying to throw pillows underneath her every time, you know? Like, there is a process, and this happened along the way early in our relationship where, you know, I tried to be everything for her. And I couldn't, because A, it's not possible for me to, B, it's exhausting, and C, it wasn't doing her any good because I was a garbage man trying to be a surgeon, basically, is that type of the mentality, really, you know, because I just didn't have the tools needed to be able to help her in the areas that she needed help when it came to the spiritual side of it, as an example. So the reality of it is that, you know, I have to be by her side, and I have to do everything I can do within my own power to try to help her. But there's some things that I can't. And if she needs to sit there miserable for a few days, or if I need to sit there miserable for a few days in my own crap just before I finally pick up the phone and call my sponsor, or whatever I actually need to do, or plug into God, like that's both of our own journeys, right? And we kind of mentioned it earlier about robbing the other person of that process and robbing that other person of that lesson that's sometimes uncomfortable to learn. However, it's much needed.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, one thing I forgot to mention when we started this is that the spiritual principles and things like that, if you guys have ever attended the traditions I've facilitated in the past, it's different. Why? Because we're looking at this from a different perspective. So I wanted to clear that up, first of all. Second, all of these traditions go back to unity in the relationship. They're all just different ways to protect the relationship, right? So a lot of it is kind of repetitive, right? They bleed into each other. It's very, very hard to isolate any one. But another way you can look at this tradition would be that Dave gets to have his own beliefs and philosophies, and so do I, right? And he can convey those via attraction rather than promotion. we do have a lot of different views on pretty much everything, right? And I can accept that most of the time, right? But if I am trying to get him over on my side, right? I want him to, let's say I am a certain religion, right? Or a certain political party, and I'm trying to get him to convert over to me, okay? Here's the kicker. If he does, this is so sick. I am so sick, but here's the deal. If he does, let's say he has been lifelong Democrat, right? And I convert him over to a Republican, I'm not going to respect him. I got what I wanted, but now I don't respect him. I'm sick. So, anyway, when I am trying to obtain something, oftentimes it will lead to manipulation, withdrawing, intimidation, domination. I mean, who knows, sulking, whatever. And that is not incorporating any type of respect or humility. When I am spiritually fit and able to accept, not only accept, but welcome Dave's opposite views on things, I can totally accept, and everything is great. Not only that, again, it goes back to the fact that he teaches me, right? It goes back to the fact that we're better together than separate. Because oftentimes, we can be on opposite ends of the continuum, right? And what I have learned, this is just my experience, even with defects of character, right? Let's say fear. I'm so afraid I never leave the house. Zero fear, I just jump in front of cars, right? Neither one is healthy. But by sharing our views without the expectation of anything changing, right? I'm just going to share with you, and I just want to hear about how you view this. Oftentimes what happens is somehow we find ourselves in the middle, right? And I want to be in the middle. I'm sick of the extremes. They're exhausting. But I don't need to tell him what to do, how to do it, what to believe. It's all good. I can love him right where he's at, and he can love me right where I'm at.
Just to wrap up this, I guess a question to ask yourself is, how do I encourage or discourage this relationship? Am I there for Megan and supporting her in the things that she wants to do spiritually, or the things she wants to do in her career? Even the things
even if they don't include each other.
Right.
Can I support him even if it doesn't include me? Is what I'm about to say going to promote our unity? Or is it going to separate us and cause a division? Sorry.
What she said. Tradition 12. Selflessness has immense spiritual significance, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Nailed it. He gets a gold star. Y'all don't. Okay. No. And I'm just going to read this whole top. One of the greatest privileges is to be of service without fanfare. Being helpful diminishes our ego, pride, arrogance, selfishness, unwillingness, and strengthens our gratitude, humility, willingness, love, forgiveness, understanding, joy, freedom, etc. The spiritual substance of anonymity is sacrifice. So, putting this principle, putting this marriage above my own personality, above her personality, because let's be honest, as human beings, our personalities can vary as to warm and fuzzy or dark and twisty from time to time. But the reality is that if I put this principle of marriage before her being a brat, or before me being, or she puts this principle of marriage before me being a jerk, like that's And it's not perfect, and it's not easy sometimes. However, I made this commitment to love her in good and bad, right? I made this commitment to love her through these things and with her.
And he has. He has. There are times, sorry, I'm probably ticking you off. But, life is life, right? And this, not this year, I guess the one previous, was not a fun one. And there was grief. And there's depression. Like, I suffer from depression, like the icky kind. And I believe it or not, I have communicated something. And when I'm really depressed, right? So I have depression. My best friend died, right? It gets bad if I'm not picking up spiritual tools. And I didn't. I have previously communicated to him that when I'm depressed, all I want to do is pull the covers over my head. And I need you to get me out of bed. And I'm going to fight. And I'm going to kick. And I'm going to say vile things to you. But I need you to be strong enough to do that for me anyway. And he has. And it's ugly. But that's what I need in those moments. And when we look at renunciation, it's about rejecting something that maybe I've previously enjoyed. It's about sacrifice, right? When he goes into my bear's den, he's sacrificing his well-being
Just throw a shoe, it's fine.
to try and increase mine, right? And especially sacrificing things like self-importance, right? My rights, my ambitions. Can I sacrifice my need to be important, right? And do all these things? And I'm not saying that it's bad to do things or get promotions or travel. Nothing is wrong with that. But I don't do it at a neutral level. I do it like a tweaker style, right? I'm all in, all the time. Go, 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 right? Which means then there's no time for him. Why? Because I'm hanging out in the world, trying to be important. And Davis told me, I hate this, that sometimes he feels as though, in my job and in a typical day and in AA and by the time I get home, that I try to give my best to everyone around here. And by the time I get home, I have nothing left for him. And that hurts. And he's right. He's right.
And we come to this program broken. Usually we get our life back, and we have to place some of these priorities. And the truth of the matter is that in my life and in this marriage, sometimes those priorities are, for me, are God, and then that priority is program. And if we're lucky, we get to be third or fourth in each other's lives. But the truth of the matter is that if I don't have those other things before her, she's not going to get anything that she wants anyway out of it. It's going to be miserable. If I put her on top, it's going to be a miserable showing of me trying to be a husband. So I have to have that God first, and I have to have this program. And don't get me wrong, it's not like, and sometimes being third or fourth in each other's lives sucks. It's hard. However, I know that, if it's 10:30 at night and I haven't heard from her much and I don't really know where she's at, I know in my heart that whatever she's doing is out of service to somebody else, right? I know all these days during the week where we don't get to see each other much. We're doing our best to try to be better people out there because the reality and the truth is that the life that I was given originally is gone. Like, I destroyed that one. I got this second chance. So the least I can do is utilize some of it to be helpful to somebody else, right? And that's why I'm willing to sacrifice. My boss's wife at work, I tell her what my week looks like and what Megan's week looks like between AA and sponsees and this, and she's like, what is wrong with you? It's like, you work too much. I was like, you don't understand. This is the least I can do because I should be dead, you know? When I decided to quit my career, my 12-year job as a service manager for a tire and lube, to take no paycheck and work part-time to run a sober living house. Excuse me. I was telling my cousin's wife this. She was mid doing dishes, and I explained to her that I'm going to quit my job and I don't know how I'm going to pay my house, but I'm going to go help start this sober living house. She literally stopped. She turned to me and she goes, "You can't do anything normal, can you?" Right? Like, and she would, because she's a very in the box person. But here's the truth: the two people that are sitting in front of you right now have done a lot of screwing up along the way in this relationship. We haven't done it pretty. It's been pretty nasty along the way. But the life that I have with this woman is 100-fold more fulfilling and peaceful and amazing than I would have ever wanted along the way. We're not doing it pretty. We make our mistakes. But the benefit and the gain that I have by spending that time knee to knee with a guy, or, you know, chasing her halfway across the state to go run somebody, like, whatever it is, like, that's where I find my purpose. And together we both found our purposes, and a good chunk of that is Alcoholics Anonymous.
And I just want to say a couple things, and we'll close. And I'm so impressed that we got through that. Like, we just started talking really fast. But what Dave was talking about, for us to be well, you know, part of our relationship includes sacrificing some, not all, time together for 12-step work, right? We have an agreement, and I don't think we've ever even talked about the agreement. But it's like, you know, if it's date night and a new or struggling sponsee calls, we will take it. You know, we sacrifice a lot of Saturdays because that's the only time we have with our work schedule to do 5th steps. Cool. I don't complain about it, and neither does he. Because I think we both know and understand that in order for me to bring him my best, I've got to be with you, right? Now, again, that doesn't mean I use AA as an excuse not to be at home, right? But it does mean that in order for our lives to continue, we have to be here. We cannot forget what we are. I want to I want to read some questions that my sponsor gave me when I wrote my sex ideal. Okay? You guys all know the sex ideal is based upon mistakes we make, right? I'm going to read you part of that as well. But these questions blew my mind because I had never thought of this, right? What is dating? What is the purpose of dating? How do I know I'm ready to date? How do I know when it's time to stop dating someone? How do I make that decision? How do I break up with someone? What is the purpose of sex? How do I know I'm ready? Do I use birth control? Why or why not? What is the purpose of marriage? How do I know I'm ready? Am I open to divorce? Why or why not? Right? I'd never thought about these things before. It's crazy talk. Like, purpose of dating is to get a free meal. Oh crap, did I just delete that? Hold on. Whew, thank you, God. So the sex ideal, right, that we write in here, it is a working document, okay? Dave and I have a relationship ideal, but we forgot to bring it, so sorry. Where we write about who we are as a couple in this world, what's our primary purpose, what is non-negotiable, violence of any kind, right? And we have it hanging on our fridge, which is why we forgot to grab it. But I just want to read you a little bit of my sex ideal, because it shows you the mistakes I've made and what I'm aiming to do instead. And all of it relates to what we just talked about all day. And I didn't even know it when I did this, right? It's crazy that if I live by a spiritual mode of life, that is all contained in this. Who knew? So, this is specifically regarding Dave. And I also want to let you guys all know what an ideal is, meaning I'm trying to grow towards it, not that I do it. Okay? I mean, some of it I hope I do, but some of it I'm falling short, and I know it just by looking at this. But I will ask for what I want and need. When my needs differ from his, I will be willing to have an open, honest, and mature conversation. I will not look at resolving conflict as a win-lose or a win-win, but a win and learn about Dave. I will use conflict and disagreement as a way to learn and understand my husband. Those are like the same thing. I will not assume our relationship only includes 3, and that's not exes. Is your ex involved in your relationship? Meaning, are you carrying that baggage? Am I jealous of his ex? Am I thinking about her? And am I bringing her in my mind? Just had to throw that out there. But our relationship does include 3, and it's Dave, me, and God. I will not bring others into it, meaning I will not let other people get in between us as well. Sometimes I have. If you need something from Dave, ask him. Don't ask me. I'm not going to get in the middle of your relationship, which then with him, which then will cause issues between me and Dave, right? Bree asked me to get this paper laminated, so now I'm, okay, Dave, do it. Dave's getting mad, and then we have resentment. I'm bringing people into this, and you didn't, I'm joking, into this relationship that don't belong there, right? He has a phone. Get a hold of him. I'll bring it to him. Okay. I will honor Dave and not make sarcastic or belittling comments. I will listen patiently and take interest in his day or activities. I will support his interests with or without me. I will not try to fix him. I will listen openly and be empathetic to his issues. I will be his wife, not his sponsor. I will say yes when I mean yes and no when I mean no. I will avoid passive-aggressive comments. Big fail. I will treat Dave with love, patience, and tolerance under all conditions. I will not withhold my love, affection, or attention. I will make time for intentional time with Dave. I will either plan or engage in a weekly date night. Not doing that. I will protect it like any other commitment. Upon nightly review, I will inform Dave of anything that may impact him, such as problems at work or me going out of town. Do you bring your work home with you in your head? Or maybe that sponsee that you really love that went back out. Did you bring that home with you? I do. And if I don't communicate that, again, he thinks I'm mad at him. If I don't communicate that, I rob him of an opportunity to comfort me. Why? Because I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need no comforting. It's ridiculous. I will pray before walking into the home. If I need time to decompress, I will ask for it after I give him a hug and a kiss. I will greet Dave as kindly and as enthusiastically as I greet Hazard.
Never gonna happen. Never gonna happen.
It's an ideal. I will message him at least every other day a message of love and or encouragement. I will message him a prayer for his day each morning before I leave for work. I will set aside time each night to connect before going to bed. If I am too tired to engage in an important conversation or resolve conflict, I will schedule time the following day for us to address it. I will honor Dave's wants and needs. I will engage and give attention, even if I don't find what he is talking about particularly interesting.
That's never happened, so it's okay.
If it is a part of his life and important, I shall honor it. I will not be dismissive. I will encourage and support him. I will remember always we are a team. His burdens are also mine, not in a codependent way, but I will support him and help when asked. I will no longer compartmentalize his life versus mine. His success or failure is not dependent on me, but I will encourage and support him. I am the only wife he has or will ever have, and God has chosen me for this very important role. May I never forget that. Done? All right. Thank you guys for letting us be here today, tell you about our dysfunction.